At the start of our story, we see an old man coughing and saying, "I am an earthling from a civilized society. I came from a civilized society." Just then, a little girl enters his house with some food in her hand. Seeing the old man like that, she says, "Mr. So, are you okay? My mother sent this for you." Here, we learn that this old man's name is So. He thanks the little girl. Then, while placing the food on the ground, little girl replies, "Not a problem. Please get well soon and make some more soap." Saying that, she leaves the house and walks back toward her home in a snowstorm. This old CO is an earthling, an inhabitant of a civilized world. It's been 50 years since he fell into this cursed world. They were on their way to a workshop with Director Kim and other company employees when they were suddenly swept away in a landslide. When they came to their senses, they found themselves in a strange world. A fox as big as a house with 3 tails, a large red-scaled snake with 2 heads, and beings wielding swords flying through the sky. It was a world like the martial arts novels he occasionally read. Although it was a strange world, most of his colleagues probably did quite well, except for him. Among the 7 people who fell into the martial world that day, within just 3 days of their arrival, destinies began to unfold. The sage-like beings who descended from above were in awe of his co-workers' mythical talents and took each one of them into the sky. Only he and Director Kim remained in this world. To be honest, they had hopes that something special would happen to them too, but neither Director Kim nor he had any special abilities. Diamam found itself in his podum, and Diamam took to his people and led them to the spot of them. Without knowing much about this world, all they could do was manual labor. For 6 months, the two worked menial jobs in a busy marketplace, earning their meals. Until one day, Director Kim could take it no longer. He told CO that he couldn't live like this anymore and used all his money to buy a third-rate martial arts book sold on the streets. Everyone laughed at him, but within 3 months, he mastered it and became a full-fledged martial artist. He worked for the nation and learned more and more advanced martial arts. After he became a powerful warrior, Director Kim left for the Jianghu, leaving Seo behind. Seo just hoped that something special could happen to him as well, but until the end, nothing happened to him at all. After 50 years, he is now just an old man dying from a common cold. He coughs blood, repeating that he is from Earth. He has tried his hardest to live. He learned the language, learned to read and write, worked as a laborer to make a living, bought a small plot of land, and built his own house. He started making some decent money when he began making soap using lye. In this medieval time, soap was essentially a new concept. However, even that ended after some thieves stole the method of making his soap and started producing their own. These thugs booted So out of the market. Now he is waiting for his death. Having been rejected by this world, a frustrated So asks the world, "What do you want from me? Even though I tried my hardest, what must I do?" He starts crying, asking why he couldn't have been selected even if he was not special, and why he has to continue losing everything. Now CO no longer has the energy to keep his eyes open. As his eyes start to close, he hopes that if he just had a bit more power, maybe, just maybe, he might have had more opportunities. Lying on his bed, sick with a cold, CO's life ends. That was how he died, and how, with a bright light, he opened his eyes again. He slowly looked down at his body. It's not a hand full of wrinkles and lines. It is a young hand, full of vitality and life. He was wearing something clearly different from the clothes of this world, the blue shirt and sweatpants he had worn on Earth. He looked around, trying to grasp the situation. Then he saw Director Kim, Chief O, Section Chief Jun, Deputy Manager Kang, Deputy Manager O, and Manager Kim. So was shocked to see them. Now he finally realized he hadn't come to this world powerless. He had gained the power of regression. This was So's first regression. Director Kim, with half his hair shaved off, looked around and asked, "What's happening? We were just on our way to a workshop." He didn't know where they were, but CO knew. This was the first day they had just landed in this strange world. CO remembered how they ended up here. They were in an SUV going to the workshop when they got caught in a landslide, and then something flashed. It was a 50-year-old memory, so it was a bit hazy, and even CO couldn't remember clearly. While he was thinking this, suddenly someone called from behind, "Hey, Deputy Manager CO!" But CO was still lost in his thoughts, wondering, now that I have regressed, how should I live? Usually, in regression novels, people live well using their future knowledge. But all I know is making soap. Suddenly, the guy from behind grabbed CO's shoulder and shouted, "Manager, Sionyon!" CO snapped out of his daydream at the shout. He looked back and saw it was Section Chief Zion. CO said, "Sorry," trying to explain that he was a bit startled. But suddenly, with a swish, Section Chief Zion slapped CO across the face. Everyone present was shocked to see that. Section Chief John shouted, "Deputy Manager CO, you bastard, you dozed off while driving on the mountainside. You almost got us all killed." Seo stood there dazed from the slap. He had forgotten this deputy manager title. It was a title he hadn't heard in so long that he didn't realize Section Chief Jun was referring to him. Section Chief Jun looked at Seo angrily and asked, "Manager Seo, do you want to lose your job the moment we get back?" Hearing that, Seo remembered the face he hadn't seen in a long time. Section Chief John Myung-hoon was a son of a bitch. He was the nephew of John Myung-chol, the executive director of the company Seo worked for. At 32, he had already snagged the section chief position through nepotism. When John Myung-hoon was about to charge at Seo in anger, Chief Oh stood up and stopped him. He told John it was enough, because that landslide wasn't something Deputy Manager Seo could have done anything about. But John shouted again, asking, "Aren't you angry, Chief Oh? This insane jerk was dozing off. That's why we're in this situation." Hearing that, Seo remembered that he definitely had dozed off while driving. But the reason he was dozing off was because John had dumped all his work on Seo the day before the workshop, the work John had been putting off, forcing Seo to stay up all night. Thinking about it again, Seo also remembered that originally the one in charge of driving was John. Originally, he was supposed to drive. Pointing at Seo, John shouted, "This stupid bastard. We're stranded because of him." But Seo was slowly starting to recall his memories from 50 years ago. Back then, Seo was so shocked, he didn't understand what was happening. So, unwittingly, he apologized to John. He even thought it was his own fault. Then he went on to spend the next 50 years just like that, apologizing to people even when a group of bandits trampled over him and took his belongings, when a damned martial artist mocked him, or when a regional official took everything he had in the name of taxes. He kept apologizing, but there was one thing Seo realized after years of holding it in. Sure, he had to keep his temper in front of those he couldn't handle, but not in front of everyone. Seo stood up and, with a straight face, said, "Section Chief John, I know you're mad, but now's not the time to be pointing fingers." Hearing that, John got furious and lunged at him, shouting, "You damn son of a bitch." He punched Seo again, shouting, "Are you asking for a fight?" This punch made Seo realize that he didn't need to kneel before someone he could handle. He turned around and punched John in the face, sending him flying. Seeing that, everyone present was too shocked. They could not believe their eyes. So continued punching John. In his past life, Seo had been beaten up by martial artists countless times. He was beaten up by bandits while gathering herbs in the mountains, by more bandits during years of bad harvest, and even by officials because he couldn't pay his taxes. Now, Seo sat on John, not giving him even a chance to fight back. Seeing this, everyone froze in their place, not knowing what to do. In that world of violence, Seo was able to gain something that these people lacked. He gained violence. If one hits someone in the eyes, their fear is amplified, and after being beaten up like this, only 2 words instinctively leave opponents' mouths: "I'm sorry." Those were the exact words John said when Sue hit him in the eyes. Sue may not have the mythical talents mentioned by those transcendent individuals, or the amazing martial arts that would make him famous in the martial arts world, but now he did have the ability to change fate. Director Kim, Chief Oh, Deputy Manager Kang, Deputy Manager Oh, and Manager Kim all were looking at Sue with fearful eyes. Among them, Director Kim spoke up with a trembling voice, "Deputy Manager Seo, no matter what, how could you beat a fellow colleague to that extent?" Seo didn't argue and immediately accepted it, saying, "Yes, you're right, Director Kim. I just got so angry at the moment. I apologize for startling everyone." Since Seo would never see any of the others again anyway, he bowed neatly to Director Kim and the other employees and apologized, saying that since he was the one driving, he was sorry for not doing more at that time. Director Kim told Seo that sure, Section Chief Jun had been a bit harsh, and Seo couldn't really have done anything about the landslide. Even then, Jun overreacted. He asked Seo to apologize to Jun directly. Knowing he would continue seeing Director Kim, Seo followed his words because Director Kim would become one of the strongest martial artists there once he started learning. If Seo supported him as much as he could in this life, he was sure he would get something out of it too. That meant he needed to get on Director Kim's good side now. Seo turned to Jun and, while offering a helping hand, apologized, saying his reaction was not warranted. Han, whose face was swollen from Seo's beating, looked angry and was about to crush him, but he stopped after seeing Seo look at him with dead eyes and no fear. After everyone calmed down, Director Kim looked toward the forest and suggested, "Why don't we try to get out of these woods and look for a village?" Seo agreed because that was the logical thing to do, but he knew that here, immortals flew wild, trying to secure their immortality, and the only rule that reigned in this land was, "The strong devours the weak." The people of this place, the Miram, fought with swords for wealth and honor. This forest's name was Ascension Path. There was no village, city, or nation anywhere around here. CO suggested to Director Kim, since the sun is going to set soon, why don't we set up a shelter somewhere safe? Director Kim thought CO's suggestion was right, but asked, what about the car? There's quite a lot of things in there that we packed for the workshop. In that car, there were many things they could use, but only CO knew they wouldn't be able to find the car. He also knew they wouldn't believe him, so he decided to just let them look for the car instead of wasting his energy trying to convince them. He suggested that they should split up. Then, one team could look for shelter and the other could look for the car. They would meet back here before it got completely dark. After a few hours, CO started a fire in a cave near the place they first arrived. While eating, a black-haired girl told the others that she didn't get it. We were caught in a landslide while we were in a car, so how did we end up here while the car is gone? Director Kim agreed with the girl, saying he didn't get it either. Everyone was sitting around the fire eating. Pointing at the food, a girl commented, "This tastes like chestnuts." Hearing that, Seo asked her if it was crunchy. He told them he had a lot of it, so they could have as much as they wanted. Hearing that, Director Kim laughed and said, "It's a pretty serious situation, but thanks to Manager Seo, we're having fun." He praised Seo, saying, "I knew you were this dependable even back in the company." While everyone was eating, Seo noticed John sleeping in a corner, refusing to eat anything. Director Kim spoke a little louder so John could hear. "Manager Seo, if I remember correctly, you were tired while driving because you had to work late yesterday." Others agreed with Director Kim. A brown-haired girl told Director Kim, "He's right, their manager is really diligent." A red-haired girl also praised Seo, saying, "It feels like we're camping thanks to this cave manager Seo found." Seo knew they were right, because in his past life, they only found this place after being lost in the woods for hours, but he acted modest and told them he was just lucky. Hearing that, everyone laughed and told Seo he could just take the compliment. Seo also thought that he should enjoy this moment because tonight would be the last time they could laugh like this. The next morning, trembling in fear, Seo offered his greetings to the Lord of the Forest. The Lord of the Forest he was greeting was a huge seven-tailed fox with red glowing eyes. The fox looked at Seo and, with a smile, said, "Human, you have quite a unique scent for a human. Despite having lived thousands of years, I have never smelled humans like you." Hearing the commotion outside, the black-haired girl woke up. She came outside and asked Seo what had happened. But when she saw the huge fox, she got scared and screamed. Hearing her scream, others also woke up and came out of the cave. When they saw the huge fox, they too got scared and screamed. Hearing them, Seo looked back and shouted, telling them to show their manners to the Lord of the Forest and get on their knees. Hearing Seo, the seven-tailed fox said, "Every time I come across you humans, I am reminded how foolish and rude you all are." It told them that it would usually rip off all their limbs, but since one of them seemed to know how to treat him, he would forgive them. With that being said, they must pay the price for being in his territory. If one of them offers him an arm, he will let them stay here. Hearing the fox talk, everyone was already too scared, and after listening to its demands, they became even more terrified. Seo was also very scared because in his past life, everyone who saw this monster screamed in panic, and they all ended up dead, having angered the fox. But Seo was a little relieved to see that the fox appreciated his manners this time, and wasn't ripping off all their limbs like last time. Then, while licking its mouth, the seven-tailed fox asked who would give him their arm. Seo calculated that it was just one person's arm. That's all they needed to sacrifice. Even a lost arm would be healed by the cultivators, who would appear 2 days later. Plus, Seo had already prepared an herb that would reduce the pain. Thinking all that, Seo removed his sleeves and extended his hand toward the seven-tailed fox. While trembling, he told it that he would offer his arm. Everyone was shocked that Seo was sacrificing his hand for them. The seven-tailed fox opened its mouth and immediately lunged at Seo, saying, "You know your manners, so I will try to make it as painless as possible in return." Then, in the next second, with a loud scream of pain, Seo lost one arm. The seven-tailed fox completely bit off Seo's hand and ate it. Everyone looked away. They couldn't bear to see the horrifying scene right in front of them. Seo was in too much pain. Tears streamed down his face as he extended his other arm to grab the herb. The pain was so intense that Seo didn't have time to think about anything else at the moment. He immediately ate the herb he had prepared for pain relief. After eating Seo's hand, the seven-tailed fox told Seo that it thought he might taste different, since he smelled different. But he tasted the same as the other humans. Actually, he tasted worse because of all the impurities in his veins. Hearing the fox, Seo began to come back to his senses. He was surprised to see that the herb actually helped a lot with the pain. After calming down, Seo apologized to the seven-tailed fox, saying his offering was not good enough. But the fox was not interested in talking. It turned around to leave, telling them that it would allow them to stay for 7 days in its territory and that they wouldn't die thanks to its divinity. Saying that, it leapt into the sky with super speed and disappeared. After the seven-tailed fox left, a worried group ran toward Seo to check on him. Seo slowly stood up and asked everyone to go inside, saying he would explain everything. Once inside the cave, Seo slowly told them that he had met the fox when he left the cave early that morning. The fox told him that they were in Muram. Everyone was shocked to hear they were in Muram. Director Kim asked Seo if he meant they were really in Muram because it was unbelievable. Seo said it didn't matter and told them they would be safe for a week since he had given up his arm. Hearing that it was just a week, Director Kim asked Seo what would happen after that. Breathing heavily, Seo told Director Kim that they would need to give up something else the following week. Hearing that, everyone was stunned. As the herb's effects kicked in, Seo started to get sleepy. He told the others that he was getting sleepy and would rest a bit, hoping they would understand. Saying that, he fell asleep right there. Then, 15 hours later at night, Seo woke up alone in the cave. He heard his colleagues talking outside. They were all angry at John, asking him how he could say that Manager Zoe sacrificed his own arm. John argued back, asking, then who wants to give up their arm and leg every week? But Chief O told John that Manager So was very useful since he was the one who provided them food and shelter. Then John suggested they should learn as much as they could from So in a week, adding that since So had already lost an arm, he wouldn't last long anyway. That's why they should have him be the sacrifice again. Joan said all that, not knowing Seo had woken up and was listening from behind. Seo was surprised to hear that now that he had become debilitated, Joan wanted to chop off one of his limbs every week to give to the fox. That was definitely not pleasing. Looking at Joan, Seo grabbed a rock from the ground. He looked at the rock and thought that with the violence he had learned from being beaten up for 50 years, he could easily kill a modern-day man like Jeon Myung-hoon with one arm. He looked at John again, who was still convincing others to force Seo to give up his other arm too. Angrily, Seo thought to himself whether he should kill Jun, but he didn't act recklessly. Instead, he threw the rock back and returned to the cave. He understood that fear had surely paralyzed their minds, and if he acted too cruelly now, it would cause issues with his relationship with Director Kim. Suddenly, Chief O shouted at Jun to shut up if he didn't want his ankles broken again. Hearing that, Seo laughed. He was right to think that they were good people. It was just a confusing situation for everyone. The next day, as the sun rose, everyone gathered in front of the cave. This time, a two-headed snake appeared before them. But, unlike the fox who had eaten Seo's arm, the two-headed snake only requested a small amount of blood. It was the very same snake that had sucked out Chief O's blood, who had lost his limbs in his last life. Hearing that it was just a small amount, nervous Chief O put his own arm forward this time, but after drinking Chief O's blood, the snake vomited, saying, "This is disgusting. This is the worst human blood I have ever had." Hearing that, Chief O got furious, but Seo knew it was the blood of a 21st century worker drenched in nicotine and cholesterol. No wonder it tasted gross. So then turned around and asked John Myung-hoon to come with him to pick some herbs. Hearing that, John was shocked and asked So if he had just called him by his full name. But So didn't reply. Instead, he asked if John was hungry. John said he was. Seo walked toward Jun and said, "I will tell you about the fruits and edible herbs, so follow me." Seo got closer and whispered to Jun that he planned to give his arm to the fox next week as well, and if he died, someone needed to know how to survive in this forest. Hearing that, Jun got very scared. Realizing that So had heard everything last night, he had no choice but to thank So and agree to go with him. Hearing his thanks, So laughed inside, because only he knew the fox wouldn't be coming back, and Jun would never make use of this knowledge. As both of them arrived at a place full of fruit trees, Seo shouted, "Jeon Myung-hoon, how many times do I need to tell you that that's the wrong fruit?" "Concentrate," Seo said sorry while picking a red fruit. Seeing that, Seo told him that fruit would get him killed. This continued for hours as Seo gave orders to Jung, and Jung had to follow them. Jun started to get exhausted and asked Seo to hold on, saying he needed a break. He had been digging non-stop to get these herbs. Seeing his condition, Seo laughed inside because this was how Jun used to punish him when he first entered the company. Seo told Jun that they needed to finish before dusk, so they should hurry up. Slowly, time passed, and both continued doing their part. Then, suddenly, Jun dug out a very large ginseng. Jun was shocked to see it. He held it in his hand and said, "This thing is massive." He asked Seo if this was natural ginseng. Seo told him it was something like that. Seo knew that while it did resemble ginseng, to be precise, it was a yellow bamboo root. It might be because the ascension path was so full of energy, but yellow bamboo roots, which are typically as small as a pinky finger, grew to this size here. Seo knew it wouldn't be of much use to cultivators, but it was an extremely precious medicine for martial artists used to increase ki, and it should help Director Kim. While talking, they found two more right there. Amazed, John asked Seo if it was okay to dig up this much wild ginseng. Seo, of course, said yes and told him to take off his shirt and place them in it. Seo looked at the setting sun and a crack in space. Seeing that, Seo realized it was almost time for those cultivators to come. He asked Jian, "Let's head back." As they returned to the cave, suddenly the crack Seo had seen before exploded with a huge blast, releasing massive amounts of spiritual energy into the sky. At the moment of the explosion, Chun fell to the ground, screaming while grabbing his head. Not only him, Chief O was in the same condition along with Manager Kang. All three of them were clutching their heads, screaming in pain. Seeing this, Director Kim began to panic, asking what had happened to them. Just then, three cultivators appeared, flying into the sky. Looking at John, Chief O, and Manager Kang, a cultivator named Buko wearing golden clothes, said, "What a surprise! To think we'd find such uncut talent here." A black-clothed cultivator named Hyogwok told Buko to go away, saying they were his. Hearing that, the third cultivator wearing blue clothes called Hyogwok shameless. Seeing these cultivators, Director Kim got scared and asked who they were. The cultivators noticed there were 7 people, but only the 3 had spiritual roots. The rest were just normal mortals. Then Buko raised his hands and created a ball of lightning. He struck Jun with it, and Jun screamed in pain as thousands of bolts of lightning entered his body. When Buko stopped, he was amazed to see how incredible Jun's body was. It was the body of heavenly golden thunder. Then Hyogwok came forward, telling Buko to move because it was his turn. Hyogwok was holding a musical instrument, and as he started playing, Manager Kang, who was covering her ears, suddenly began screaming in pain. But it wasn't a normal scream. It was so loud that the whole forest echoed. Seeing that, Hyowok got too excited, realizing that Manager Kang had the ghostly yin transforming immortal root. He hadn't thought such a thing really existed. Then it was the third cultivator's turn. He landed on the ground and, grabbing Chief O's shoulder, injected his spiritual energy into him. He checked Chief O's body and found that it was a unique holy body. Chief O was too shocked, asking the cultivator what was going on. The cultivator smiled and declared that he would take all 3 of them as disciples of the Azure Heaven creation sect, because all 3 had the talent to change the entire world. With a deep voice, he asked Chief O, "How does that sound, Chief?" O was terrified in the cultivator's presence. He couldn't even breathe. He was confused, wondering what this force was and felt like he would die if he refused. Suddenly, Hyogwok came down and asked Chief O to join the Black Ghost Valley instead, saying they had every cultivation method, immortality, the power to overturn the heavens, fame, and wealth. He promised to ensure they would get all of those things within 100 years. Suddenly, Buko also came down and asked Hyogwek what he was saying, claiming that the Golden Divine Heavenly Thunder sect was the most suited for them. While they were talking, Director Kim intervened and asked the cultivators if they could get them out of this forest because at this rate they would all die there. But the cultivators completely ignored him. Buko took out a bottle and opened its cap, saying, "Mortals worry too much. How did you get to the ascension path with such a worthless body?" Saying that, he pointed the bottle's mouth toward Jean, and the bottle sucked Jean inside. Jean could only scream for help. Then the blue cloth cultivator took Chifo and looked at Siuv. He smiled and said, "Seems like one of them lost an arm to that fox," and seeing the wound, he offered it up himself. He used his spiritual power to heal Sio's hand, telling him that he may be a mere mortal, but he had guts. Sio's whole hand grew back, and he thanked the cultivator. Hyogwok also took Manager Kang with him. Then all 3 cultivators flew back into the sky and, while leaving, told Seo that they had captured all the beasts and monsters of the Ascension Path on their way here, so it would be safe here for the next 10 years. Seeing them leave, Director Kim chased after them, asking them to hold on and to tell them where to go because they didn't even know which way to take to leave. He called out to Section Chief Jeong, Chief O, and Deputy Manager Kang, but it was no use. The cultivators flew into the sky and disappeared. Seeing them go, Seo was very disappointed, but it was no use because the same thing had happened 50 years ago. No matter how hard they shouted, those cultivators ignored them like insects and continued on their way. Seo was a little relieved that at least they had healed his arm. While chasing after them, Director Kim ran out of breath and fell to the ground, asking, "What do you want us to do in a forest like this?" But before he lost all hope, suddenly Director Kim saw many beams of light flying in the direction those cultivators had gone. Seeing that, he got confused and asked, "What are all those lights in the sky? Is there something in that direction?" But Director Kim could not leave his team behind, so he returned. The next day, it was a rainy day with lightning striking all around. All four Manager Kim, Manager, and Director Kim were hiding in the same cave. But Deputy Manager O's condition was not good. She was coughing up blood while lying on the ground. Manager Kim asked Se if there was some kind of herb they could use because Deputy Manager O was in terrible condition. She was panicking, not knowing what to do. Knowing the future, Se told Manager Kim, "Let's wait a little longer. Someone might appear and heal her." Hearing that, Manager Kim got confused. Suddenly, they heard someone's footsteps. Someone entered the cave and said, "Mortals in the Ascension Path are like ants suffering among the competition between dragons." Seeing that man, Director Kim jumped right in front and asked, "Who are you?" The person smiled and said, "I am the Sea Dragon King, Soehuol." Soehuol. The Sea Dragon King, Hueol, told them that Deputy Manager O was controlling the storm outside. Hearing that, everyone was shocked. The Sea Dragon King explained that the storm suddenly appeared out of nowhere, so he came to look for its cause. Pointing at Deputy Manager O, he said that the lady lying over there must have used the sorcery of the storm. The Sea Dragon King was amazed, because she was an ordinary woman without even a trace of cultivation, so how could she wield such overwhelming power? Additionally, she was not even doing it consciously, which was very strange. Hearing that, Seo told the Sea Dragon King that actually, they were the confused ones. They had only been in this place for a short time, yet, one after another, powerful people like him appeared and took away their companions. Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King couldn't control his laughter. He asked So if he was saying that among his colleagues there were a few with extraordinary potential. And then, as if prearranged, powerful cultivators showed up and took them away. And now, here he was, conveniently appearing in front of this woman. Seo told the Sea Dragon King, that's exactly what happened." Looking at Seo, the Sea Dragon King smiled and asked, "Dear mortal, do you know where we are?" He told Seo that this place was known as the Ascension Path, or the Path to Ascension. It was a key gateway that leads to the upper realm. In just a few months, a dimensional rift called the Ascension Gate would open right around here. It happens once every 1,000 years. Countless high-level cultivators and spiritual beings would have already begun gathering around the path to ascension to ascend to the upper realm. So, isn't it quite likely that cultivators like him would appear near them? Hearing that, Seo finally understood everything. Then Director Kim told the Sea Dragon King that those cultivators said they were taking his colleagues to join their sects, and if they were ascending to the upper realm, how could his colleagues join them? Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King told them it might be hard for mortals like them to understand. He took out a bottle similar to those the cultivators had and explained that there was a technique among cultivators used to shrink large objects and store them inside magical tools like this. Those cultivators would have likely stored their sects inside items like these. Their goal was to ascend to the upper realm, along with their entire sect, when the Ascension Gate opened. The Sea Dragon King told them that in fact he too had packed one of the undersea castles of his Sea Dragon clan inside this very item. Inside it, 1,800 sea dragons lie dormant. Hearing that, Seo and Director Kim's jaws dropped in shock. The Sea Dragon King patted Deputy Manager O's head, saying she was how peculiar and intriguing. If she were to join the Sea Dragon clan, she could become something extraordinary. Seeing him patting the unconscious Deputy Manager O's head, Director Kim jumped to stop the Sea Dragon King, but the next second he fell to his knees as a very powerful force pinned him to the ground. When Director Kim tried to fight that force, it increased every time, putting more pressure on him. The one putting that pressure was the Sea Dragon King. He lifted Deputy Manager O in his hand and told Director Kim that he would give Deputy Manager O his blood and accept her as his kin, and that would be best for all of them. He also gave one more piece of advice. Looking at Director Kim with his green glowing eyes, he warned him not to casually ask high-level cultivators questions. Just as he said that, the pressure on Director Kim and O increased, and both of their eyeballs popped out. While holding Deputy Manager O in his hands, the Sea Dragon King walked away from there, telling them that he answered because he was generous, but most cultivators would have killed them for the mere act of asking a question. Saying that, he walked out of the cave into the thunderstorm, transformed into his real dragon form, and flew back into the sky. Then, the next morning, the thunderstorm suddenly stopped and the weather cleared. Manager Kim was too shocked by the fact that all her colleagues had been kidnapped. She could not understand what was happening. An avalanche out of nowhere, then immortals and dragons abducting their companions? She could not digest all of this and began to lose her mind. Seeing her like that, Seo approached, trying to calm her down. But while shaking, Manager Kim said, "Manager Seo, please, you must not be taken as well. If you're taken too, I won't be able to survive in this forest alone." Saying that, she started crying. Seeing her like that, Seo wanted to reassure her that he would not leave her, but he knew that unfortunately, their time was up. Just then, Manager Kim felt something in her head and screamed. She fell to the ground, grabbing her head, and told Seo that something was coming. Seeing her screaming, Director Kim came running and asked what's wrong with her now. Suddenly, the whole jungle went wild. All the birds in the sky and all the animals in the forest started running for their lives. Manager Kim started shaking and told them that it was Head. Hearing that, Director Kim got confused, and before he could understand anything, suddenly an old man riding a mechanical lion appeared. That old man was shocked to see mortals there and asked how mere mortals had gotten into the path to ascension. But looking at them, it didn't take that old man long to understand that when the ascension gate was about to open, the surrounding space became unstable and they must have been caught in a spatial storm. He laughed, praising himself as a genius for understanding it immediately. He then came down from his mechanical lion and asked them who was the one who had just emitted that massive consciousness. He laughed, saying that it was such a powerful presence he had thought a sage from the upper realm had descended. Looking at Deputy Manager Oh's condition, he asked if it was her. Director Kim came forward and stopped the old man, saying, "Who are you?" "Manager Kim is our colleague." But with just one swing of his finger, the old man sent Director Kim flying to one side. Seeing that, Seo immediately jumped to catch Director Kim to protect him. He caught Director Kim but was also sent flying, crashing to the ground. Director Kim was uninjured and thanked Deputy Manager Seo, but Seo didn't respond. Seeing that, Director Kim panicked and helped Seo up. To their surprise, Seo's whole back was exposed and injured because of crashing on the ground. Director Kim was shocked seeing that and asked Seo if he was all right. Seo, in a slow voice, told Director Kim he was okay. On the other hand, the old man went to Deputy Manager Oh and grabbed her by the chin, asking, "Child, let me take you in. You don't have any spiritual root, but I can awaken it for you with my power." The old man wondered what would happen if such a strange consciousness evolved into a cultivator's divine consciousness. Hearing that, Deputy Manager Oh started crying and looked at Seo and Director Kim for help. Seeing her looking at them, the old man looked at Seo and Director Kim and asked if she was still clinging to her worldly attachments even after he offered to take her in. This made the old man angry. Using his powers, he grabbed both Seo and Director Kim by the neck and lifted them into the air. Both of them started struggling to breathe. The old man told Deputy Manager Oh that he would sever all her worldly ties for her himself. Seeing both of them struggling like that, Deputy Manager Oh got very scared. She started crying, begging the old man to please stop. She told him she would do anything he asked if he just spared them. Hearing that, the old man told Deputy Manager Oh that she must forget all her worldly attachments. While crying, Deputy Manager Oh told him she understood. After hearing that, the old man spared Seo and Director Kim, and both of them fell to the ground. But the old man knew that if he left them there, she would remain attached, so he decided to return them to a mortal nation nearby. Saying that, he used his spiritual powers and opened a portal. The old man told Deputy Manager Oh that both of her colleagues would be randomly scattered through a dimensional rift, and not even he knew where they would land. Just as he said that, the huge portal opened and started sucking both Seo and Director Kim inside. Director Kim was immediately sucked into the portal before he could even understand what was happening, while Seo, before getting sucked in, used all his power to grab the herbs he had collected the previous day. Then both of them got sucked inside. Deputy Manager Oh at the opening of the portal was crying for them. As the portal closed, everything turned black. Suddenly, a whole crowd's voices filled their ears. A street vendor's voice came saying, "We have the finest silks in Yangguo. We have newly arrived scriptures from Shenzi." Both Seo and Director Kim were lying unconscious on the ground. Seo was the first to regain consciousness. As he stood up, he looked ahead and saw that he was in an alleyway, with many people walking down the street ahead. Seo didn't recognize this place and wondered where he was. The reason he didn't recognize it was that in his previous life, he hadn't fallen into a place like this. He slowly stood up, realizing that the immortal had been telling the truth, that where they landed was random. As Seo walked out of the alleyway, he found that this path felt familiar for some reason. Looking around, he finally understood that this was the place he had once lived in for those 50 years. There was a huge 10-story building right in front of Seo. Seeing that building, he finally recognized that this was the capital of Yangguo, Seokyung City. After witnessing the scene outside, Seo returned to Director Kim and woke him up. Director Kim was very exhausted and told Manager Seo that he couldn't keep up with what was going on anymore. Sitting beside Seo, he told Director Kim he felt the same way. It would be nice if this was all just a dream. Director Kim couldn't believe that it was just the two of them left behind, but he thought he should be relieved that they weren't taken by those monsters. Seo just looked at the confused Director Kim and didn't say anything because even he didn't know about this. He may have regressed, but in his past life, he was nothing but a powerless herb gatherer. Seo then told Director Kim that they couldn't stay in this alleyway forever, so why didn't they get out of here? Director Kim said, "All right," and both of them left the alleyway. But as they came out, all the people of that place started staring at them while talking in some unknown language. Hearing those people, Director Kim got very confused. He asked Seo, "What are they saying? It sounds like Chinese. Why are the people whispering while looking at us?" Seo told Director Kim those people were saying the clothes both of them were wearing looked funny. Hearing that, Director Kim was shocked. Seo smiled and told him not to worry because he knew a bit of Chinese. Director Kim wanted to ask him something, but seeing Seo's injured back, he didn't ask and said, "That's great," Seo said that, but in reality he lied to Director Kim. The language those people were speaking was not Chinese. Other than the fact that they used the same characters, it sounded completely different. In his past life, Seo had to endure the mockery of beggars for 2 months just to learn the basics of the language, but now there was no need for that. So took out the herbs he had collected earlier and asked Director Kim if they should get some new clothes. Hearing that, Director Kim was confused and asked how, because he felt like the people of this place wouldn't accept their money. Seo didn't explain to Director Kim and just took him to the city's medicine hall. The owner of the medicine hall was shocked to see the ginseng and asked Seo if he was really letting them buy such precious herbs. Seo acted tough and told the owner that those yellow bamboo roots were at least 800 years old. The owner said, "Of course," and told him that the roots should be worth about 15 silver ingots. Hearing 15 silver ingots, even Seo got nervous because he had never had that much money in his past life. But he didn't lose his composure and asked the shop owner to hurry up and take the money. The shop owner said yes and immediately gave Seo the money. After leaving, Seo and Director Kim first bought some clothes and then bought a house in the city. Director Kim was shocked to see the house they were going to live in. Seo said yes and told Director Kim that from today onward, he would teach him the language of this place. Hearing that, Director Kim got very happy and thanked Manager Seo. Seo made it seem like there was no problem, but after bribing some guys for identity plaques and buying the land and house, they only had 1 silver ingot left. He guessed it was because they were in the capital, and that's why everything was so expensive there. While Seo was looking at the money, Director Kim noticed Seo's back. Even after wearing new clothes because of the injuries on his back, his new clothes had turned red. Seeing how much Seo had helped him, Director Kim suggested to Seo that since they were in a whole new place now, why didn't he just call him by his name? Surprised to hear that, Seo told Director Kim that he was fine with that. Director Kim smiled and thanked him while calling him by his full name, So Eun-hyun. Then at night, after settling down in the house, Seo explained to Director Kim that the reason he was able to get all that money was because he sold those herbs. Pointing at the 2 remaining ginseng roots right in front of him, Seo told Director Kim that they wouldn't have a source of income if they ran out of herbs, so they needed to figure out a way to bring in money. Hearing that, Director Kim looked at the ginseng and wondered how. Suddenly, he got an idea and suggested to Seo that they use the silver they would get from selling the rest of the herbs to start a business. It was a good plan. Seo knew that with all the money they could get from this, as well as Director Kim's skill set from having been a director in a mid-sized company, they should be able to make a living. But that wasn't enough. Seo thought that since he had regressed, why not dream bigger? He knew that Director Kim was a martial genius who, after reading some third-rate martial arts books sold on the streets, became a martial master in just a few months. Once he learned more advanced techniques, he became one of the most powerful martial artists in the Jianghu. But what if he were to learn advanced martial arts from the start? Seo might be able to bring forward the birth of the greatest swordsman in the Jianghu by at least 30 years. Thinking all that, Seo smiled and decided he was going to benefit as much as he could while working for him. He told Director Kim that this was Mudim, a world of martial arts. This attracted Director Kim's attention. Seo told Director Kim that who knows when the gangs of the Jianghu might come for them if they set up a business, so shouldn't they at least learn a bit of self-defense? Director Kim's face lit up hearing the words martial arts, but he knew they didn't teach people outside the sects their martial arts. So he asked Seo how they would learn. Seeing his excitement, Seo smiled because, as a well-known Muram novel nerd, he knew Director Kim would be interested. He explained to Director Kim that in this city there are 7 famous sects. Among them the demon-slaying sect, self-binding temple, suppressing birdhouse, and the 7 mysteries sect are on the orthodox side of the Jianghu, whereas the Wolfang Gang, the Dark Knight Association, and the dragon-fighting stronghold are considered unorthodox. The people call them the 4 stars and the 3 demons. The demon-slaying sect mainly learns sword and blade techniques. The self-binding temple is a Buddhist sect, while the suppressing birdhouse is like the House sect. They focus on intelligence. The 7 mysteries sect has a very long history and teaches all kinds of martial arts. On the other hand, there isn't much information known about the 3 demons. It is said they are proficient in stealth techniques and sorcery and do a lot of illegal things. After explaining everything, So asked Director Kim which sect he liked best. Without a second thought, Director Kim chose the demon-slaying sect, adding that a martial artist should wield a sword and a man should learn blade techniques. Hearing his choice, Seo thought this was fitting for the man who was called the best swordsman in his past life, but Director Kim was confused and asked Seo how he knew all this. Seo laughed and told Director Kim that he had been eavesdropping on some martial artists talking earlier. Then, 3 months later, Seo and Director Kim went to the demon-slaying sect, but the guards stopped them, asking what brought them there. Seo introduced Director Kim as his older brother and told the guards that they had heard about how famous the demon-slaying sect was and came wishing to learn martial arts. The guard of the demon-slaying sect was a very strict, muscular guy. He looked at Seo and Director Kim's clothes and thought they looked like they had a decent amount of money, but he told Director Kim that learning martial arts at his age would be difficult. Seo laughed and offered a silver coin to the guard, asking if he wouldn't at least let them talk to someone of higher status, adding that even just simple self-defense training would do. Like that, while bribing the guard, Seo and Director Kim entered the demon-slaying sect. There, they met an elder of the sect. The elder asked if they wanted to learn martial arts for self-defense. Seo said they wanted to learn the best there was, offering a box full of silver nuggets. Seeing all those silver nuggets, the elder agreed, saying he supposed Seo could join as an external disciple. But after getting the silver nuggets, he added that they didn't give special treatment to those who joined with donations and, in addition, they would only accept one of them. Hearing that, Seo was shocked because all that money was worth only 1 yellow bamboo root and that was all they were willing to do for them. They're shocked, Director Kim tried to ask the elder if they were ripping them off, but before he could say anything more, Seo accepted the elder's conditions and thanked him, adding that his brother would be the one learning. Hearing that, Director Kim was very shocked. Then, while leaving, the elder asked Director Kim to come outside later, to where all the external disciples gathered. As he left, Director Kim asked Seo what was the use if only he would learn martial arts. He said he would have chosen a different group had he known they'd be so expensive. Seo turned around with a smile and told Director Kim not to sweat it, saying it's not like he had ever been good at sports anyway. He told Director Kim that he would just set up a business with the remaining money and support him, so he should just focus on learning martial arts. Director Kim was shocked to hear that. He couldn't believe how much Seo was sacrificing for him. He told So he would try his best, but Director Kim was still hesitant because he was old and didn't know if he would really be able to do much. So told him to believe in himself, that he could do it. Director Kim thanked So and left to train with the outer disciples. Then, 7 months later, at a competition held within the sect, all the elders of the demon-slaying sect were shocked and angry seeing the scene in front of them. The elders of the sect believed that the sect would end when knowledge had evolved in a way that made them impervious to it. Thereby, the sect ascended in stature, in their seemingly infinite wisdom. In just 7 months, Director Kim had defeated all their disciples. The elders were very angry, asking how some outsider from nowhere defeated all their beloved disciples in just 7 months. The demon-slaying sect was in an uproar.
To master a martial art means to understand the true meaning that the martial art holds and to physically attune to it. A third-rate warrior who understands the meaning of a martial art can become second-rate if they merge it into their own understanding. To advance from there, one needs more than double the amount of understanding compared to before, along with equally more time and effort. But sometimes, people with enough talent seem to laugh at typical levels of understanding and speed through many stages at once. The demon-slaying sect is full of such talented martial artists, the great sect of Seokyung City. However, an outsider has come to defeat the direct disciples of that great sect. Within 7 months, Director Kim became a first-rate warrior who had completely mastered the absolute dragon saber technique of the demon-slaying sect. The Grand Elder of the demon-slaying sect was furious seeing Director Kim because he knew it was impossible to reach first-rate with just half a year of learning martial arts. The level of first-rate is a stage only attainable with the collaborative efforts of many skilled martial artists. On top of that, Director Kim was an outsider learning in their sect. To others it would seem that their tradition had knelt to that one man. The Grand Elder immediately ordered the sect guards to capture Director Kim. Like that, Director Kim was captured and put in a house guarded by hundreds of guards. But now, even CO was captured. He knew that because an outsider had gained skills befitting an elder of a sect within 7 months, the sect was in chaos. In such a ridiculous situation, Director Kim was imprisoned in his quarters, suspected of being a spy of another sect. However, CO didn't know why he was also considered a suspect when he didn't know martial arts. CO asked Director Kim, who was practicing his sword techniques, if he wasn't worried. Director Kim laughed and asked CO what he should worry about. CO told him it was about them suspecting him as a spy. In martial arts novels, they typically destroy one's chi core or even cut off their chi flow. Director Kim admitted that it was true, but told CO that for some reason he thought he was approaching the next wall, and if he crossed it, he believed he could advance to the next stage. CO was shocked hearing that and asked what kind of monster Director Kim was. It hadn't even been long since he had become a first-rate martial artist, and now he was already nearing the next stage. CO knew that martial peak awaited after first-rate. That level was where most sect leaders of great sects or elders were at. In Yangguo, they were known as absolute masters, and there were only about 1,000 of them in the whole nation. The martial arts world never mentions the stage after that, so martial peak is essentially the last stage one can attain by learning martial arts. CO realized that his assumptions were wrong. At this rate, the birth of the greatest swordsman in the world would be sped up by 40 years, not 30. Then, 7 days later, CO and Director Kim were still in captivity. But during this time, Director Kim was not resting. He was practicing and meditating. After 7 days, all the energy he gathered turned into tree energy lotus flowers. Director Kim inhaled that lotus energy through his mouth. CO was shocked to see those lotuses because he knew that those were the flowers of chi that only appeared to peak martial artists, and 3 flowers gathered at the summit. After completely absorbing those chi flowers, Director Kim stood up and told So he had crossed the barrier, and now he was not so scared of the demon-slaying sect leader anymore. Hearing that, CO laughed and told Director Kim that his talent far exceeded his imagination. Director Kim smiled and told CO that he was also impressed by himself. He never knew he would have such talent. He mused that maybe this was why he always loved martial arts novels as a kid. Just then, an elder of the demon-slaying sect, accompanied by many guards, entered the house and announced, "Here comes Jim Young-hoon and his comrade." The elder took out a paper and told them they had orders from the sect leader to destroy the chi core of the spy who dared to steal the martial arts of the demon-slaying sect. Hearing that, Director Kim looked at the elder angrily, but Seo got scared and tried to explain. "We weren't spies, we were just..." Before he could finish, the elder punched Seo in the face, telling him to be silent because they had even heard the two of them speaking in a code-like language. He ordered the guards to restrain them. But before they could act, Director Kim pulled out his sword and before anyone could react, cut down the elder's hand with lightning speed. The elder was shocked to see that and also lost his sword. Director Kim pointed his sword at the elder and told him that this was his first sect and he wasn't a spy. However, a guard standing behind didn't listen and jumped to attack Director Kim. Before his sword could even touch Director Kim moved with lightning speed and cut down the hands of all the guards in the room. Seeing that, all the guards started running away, realizing that he was a peak-level martial artist. They immediately went to inform the sect leader. Seeing them running away, Director Kim told Seo that he intended to visit other sects to train and asked him what he would do. Seo immediately replied that he would accompany Director Kim and suggested they go to the acclaimed unorthodox sect, the Dragon Fighting Stronghold. Hearing that, Director Kim laughed and told him to go ahead and that they would meet there, adding that he would end the pursuit of the demon-slaying sect's elders and leader. Then, a few hours later, at the Dragon Fighting Stronghold's mountain range, Director Kim was standing on top of a cliff with his sword and asked Seo what took him so long. Seo, breathing heavily after climbing for so long, laughed and told Director Kim he was just too fast. While talking with Director Kim, Seo's attention was on the sword Director Kim was holding, which was soaked in blood. Seeing the sword, Seo thought that Director Kim used to call him Violence Out until recently. But even if it was to survive, this world changed them into something else. Seo thought it'd be great if they could return, not to this martial arts world, but to everyday life on Earth. And if he were to regress, he wished he could just return to Earth. Thinking all that, Seo climbed the mountain and followed Director Kim, knowing that it couldn't be helped. Now that they were here, they needed to do what they could. After being betrayed by the demon-slaying sect, Director Kim took over the dragon-fighting stronghold. 2 years later, he toured each region of Yangguo to defeat various sects, and in the 3rd year, he finally managed to destroy the emblems of every sect. Director Kim was known as the greatest martial artist under the heavens, and he used that fame to unite the sects, forming the Martial Alliance. Then, 7 years later, Director Kim and Seo were as close as brothers, ignoring the age gap. Director Kim created a martial art specifically suited for Seo and gave him the martial arts manual, saying, "This is the Severing Mountain Sword." Seo took the manual and started reading it. Director Kim explained to Seo that he named the martial art hoping Seo would inherit its will that could even cut down mountains. If he mastered the Severing Mountain Sword, he knew Seo would be able to reach martial peak. Reading the book, Seo was shocked because, aside from the things Director Kim had told him, the Dragon Vein Chi method created alongside it was true first-rate martial arts, very different from any second- or third-rate martial arts. It was a very powerful technique, and Seo started practicing it. But if there was a problem, it was that even then Seo could not learn it, and would fall to the ground immediately when facing Director Kim. Seeing that, Director Kim told Seo that he really had no talent. Yes, Seo's talent was absolutely terrible. Even though the best martial artist under the heavens created a martial art suited for him and taught him one-on-one, Seo barely made it to 3rd rate after an entire year. A year later, Seo admitted that it couldn't be helped. He told Director Kim that he did have some talent in medicine at least, as people are talented in different areas. Then, one day after the decade had passed, Seo witnessed something amazing. He saw Director Kim meditating with 5 chi flower balls forming above his head. Seo was amazed to see that because this was a level he had only heard of in legends. It was 5 energies converging to the origin. Suddenly, Director Kim's whole body started releasing huge amounts of internal chi. All his bones and joints began cracking, and the energy around him completely changed as Director Kim's white hair of old age turned black again. It was a divine scene as Director Kim's whole body went into transformation, releasing so much energy that even standing nearby was impossible. After everything calmed down, Seo looked ahead and was shocked to see Director Kim. Director Kim, who had turned into a young man, laughed and asked Seo what had him so surprised. His voice, his face, and his body had completely turned into that of a young man. This is called skeletal restructuring. Shocked, Seo called Director Kim brother, telling him he looked even younger than him. Director Kim laughed, asking if he really looked that way. He told Seo he felt so full of life, like he could do anything. Seo told Director Kim that the world would be shocked when they saw him completely transformed. While wearing his clothes, Director Kim said certainly. He walked toward Seo and told him that it was about time he handed over the Murim Alliance to the next leader. But Seo knew that there was no one who caught Director Kim's eye. Director Kim told Seo that he was right. The Murim Alliance leader, by definition, needed a certain level of martial arts, but there wasn't a single one who truly understood martial arts. Seo laughed and told Director Kim that was because he was abnormal. Where else in the world would there be a genius like him? Director Kim looked out the window to see the disciples practicing martial arts and told Seo that even so, they needed to find someone. But Seo insisted there were no talented people. Then, 25 years later, in a building in the middle of the Murim Alliance, Seo was writing with a brush. 35 years had passed since he had started his life again in Deongseonhyang. His hair had turned gray as he was already in his mid-60s. Now he wondered where young Director Kim was and what he was doing. A year after his transformation, Director Kim handed over the position of Murim Alliance leader to the next generation and retired. Seo too wanted to retire with him then. But to set the chaotic Murim Alliance straight, he had to remain in the position of the Murim Alliance's strategist for a long time. Director Kim told Seo that he wanted to wander the martial world and travel all over Yon Kingdom. Perhaps because of that, he didn't even come to Seo's retirement ceremony in the end. Old Seo came out of his room to get some fresh air. Looking around the house, he felt lonely. He had bought this house with a big heart using his retirement money, but it was too big to live in alone. That was the problem. While he was thinking about all that, suddenly he heard someone coming out of the bushes. He got alert and asked, "Who's there?" But when he got closer to check, He was surprised to see Director Kim there in torn clothes. He asked Director Kim what was with the beggar's appearance and why he hadn't even come to his retirement ceremony. "Where did you go?" Director Kim laughed and fell to the ground. Seeing him like that, Seo asked if something had happened. Looking at the sky, Director Kim told Seo that he truly thought he had blessed martial talent. Sitting beside Seo, Director Kim asked, "Isn't that right? If I'm not a genius, then what am I?" Director Kim said, "That's right. I am clearly a martial arts genius. Perhaps in this Yan Kingdom or among ordinary people like me, no one can match my martial talent." Hearing Director Kim call himself an ordinary person, Seo got confused and asked how he could be ordinary. "Who under this sky doesn't know that you are the world's #1? Before Seo could finish his words, Director Kim said in a deep voice that he fought against those cultivators and asked Seo if he remembered them. 35 years ago, those monsters who kidnapped their comrades and flew in the sky. Seo, who had experienced that time twice, immediately remembered and was shocked to find out they were cultivators. Seo knew that they didn't easily reveal themselves but secretly worked throughout the Yan imperial family and manipulated Yan Kingdom itself. After establishing the Murim alliance, as its influence grew somewhat in Yan Kingdom, those cultivator forces began to seriously interfere with them. Director Kim was displeased with this, but to defy them was to fight against the nation itself. So, to protect the Murim alliance, they had no choice but to obey them. Because of that, Director Kim stepped down from his position as Murim alliance leader and, as a human, sought them out alone throughout Yan Kingdom to contend with them. Director Kim told Seo that those cultivators were truly hard to find, and even if he found one and tried to fight, they completely ignored him, saying he wasn't worth fighting for. Then they would leave using illusions or flight techniques, making it hard to seize an opportunity. But 5 years ago, he finally got to fight a cultivator. Hearing that, Seo got very excited and asked Director Kim if he won. Director Kim told him that he did. Hearing that, Seo laughed and told Director Kim that if he had done that during his time as Murim Alliance leader, he would have grabbed him by the back of his neck. But while shaking hands, Director Kim told Seo that fighting for his life against that cultivator who had reached the Qi condensation realm, he could barely scratch his fingertip. Hearing that, Seo was shocked. Director Kim said that the cultivator he fought said even if Director Kim just grazed his body, he would count it as Director Kim's win, so he did win. Still, Director Kim was very disappointed. Seo then asked him if the cultivator at the Qi condensation realm was one of the 10 great masters of the cultivation world or something like that. Director Kim said no and told Seo that the cultivator said his realm was second from the bottom in the cultivation world. In martial arts terms, he was a second-rate warrior. Hearing that, Seo was stunned. He could not understand anything and asked Director Kim what nonsense he was talking about. In his past life and in this life, Seo knew that cultivators were formidable beings, but Young Hoon's martial arts clearly touched the heavens. He was a person who literally used skywalking to perform martial arts in the air, and could cut through millennium-old steel and buildings like tofu. But such a martial arts genius, all he could do was scratch the fingertip of a bottom-tier cultivator. With disappointment on his face, Director Kim said, "I was a frog in a well. We can never stand against cultivators. They are like natural disasters." Hearing all that, Seo started sweating. He got scared hearing Director Kim's stories. But then Director Kim took out a hand from his pocket, telling Seo that today he cut that cultivator's wrist. Hearing that, Seo got happy and asked Director Kim if that didn't mean his martial arts surpassed that cultivator. But Director Kim immediately declined and told Seo that the cultivator just put on a talisman and his hand grew back. Saying that, Director Kim stood up and told Seo that it seemed his martial path ended here. Surprised, Seo asked him what he meant by that. Director Kim told Seo that he came to say goodbye today. He laughed and said, "That person said he highly regarded my will and would take me into his cultivation sect, and I'll probably start as the youngest." Hearing that, Seo asked Director Kim if becoming a cultivator meant becoming an immortal, and didn't they say it was impossible for a body without spiritual roots? Director Kim told him that for a regular mortal, the stage of 5 energies converging to the origin is equivalent to the 5-element spiritual root that cultivators are naturally born with. He told Seo that to gain the trait that cultivators are born with, mortals like them must use their entire lives to even manifest that basic quality. Saying that, Director Kim swung his sword and cut open the space itself, creating a door in mid-air. While entering that door, Director Kim told Seo that he would now go and must aim for a higher stage. But before leaving, he handed Seo a book, saying, "This book is my last gift to you." He told Seo to stay safe and left before Seo could say anything. Seo checked the book, which was named Record of Transcending Cultivation and Exhausting Martial Arts. It was a record of attempting to use martial arts to surpass cultivation. He was very worried and looked into the air, asking Director Kim where he was going without him, but there was no reply. And so time passed. Now it had been 50 years since Seo came to this world, and here he lay dying of a common cold, just like in his previous life. This was fate. No matter how hard a human tries, they cannot escape fate. In the end, all that changed was his house and bed. He ultimately died on the same day. He lived his life to its limits because he didn't want to experience the same regret from his past life. He was so busy he hadn't even thought of marriage. And thanks to that, he was able to unite the Yangguo martial sects and experience plenty of the fame and wealth the mortal world could offer. But he could not understand the sense of emptiness in his heart. He wondered if they had struggled harder. Could Director Kim and he have reached the sky? Seo's body quaked in this sense of powerlessness. It was too regrettable, and that marked the end of Seo's second regression. After dying for the second time, Seo's eyes, which had gone blurry just a few seconds ago, opened again. He looked around and saw that he was in the same forest on the ascension path. Looking down, he noticed that his body was brimming with energy. Seeing that, he realized that regression wasn't just a one-time thing. As he was lost in his thoughts, suddenly Section Chief John charged at Seo in anger, shouting, "Deputy Manager Seo, you bastard!" But as John swung his hand to slap Seo, Seo reacted instantly and dodged the attack. John continued trying to punch him, but Seo effortlessly dodged every strike. He wasn't even paying attention to John. He was lost in thought, wondering, why did I regress? He knew that a new body full of energy and a fresh opportunity was undoubtedly a good thing. But what about everything he had built over the past 50 years? On the other hand, John began to get exhausted. Still swinging his fists to attack, he screamed at Seo, saying that he had almost gotten them all killed, and now he had the nerve to dodge. But Seo didn't respond to his words. He kept thinking, is this really a good thing? He knew the truth. It wasn't. This was a curse that denied him the meaning of life. Sure, a couple of regressions might feel like a blessed opportunity, but if this were to go on forever, Seo would be trapped in fate's wheel, forced to wallow in the suffering of life until the end of time. Moreover, he couldn't meet the people he knew in his previous life again. The people in front of him now were simply beings who shared the appearance of those he once cared for. Director Kim, whom he had thought of as an older brother, no longer existed in this world. Watching John trying to fight and becoming completely exhausted, Director Kim finally intervened, telling Section Chief John, "That's enough." Seo then told John to calm down, asking, "What help will being angry bring here?" Hearing that, John became even angrier, calling Seo shameless. But before he could say more, Seo spoke again. "In the first place, John, you were on driving duty today. I warned you before you forced me to drive that I hadn't slept last night, because of the work you offloaded on me." Seo turned to leave and asked John, how would I have even dodged an incoming avalanche on a narrow road? He advised John to stop pointing fingers and think instead about what they needed to do next. John was speechless. He was used to Seo always accepting blame and apologizing. Seo then turned to Director Kim and mistakenly called him by his name, just like he had in his previous life. But he immediately corrected himself. He told Director Kim that he would search for a place where they could stay before the sun set, and asked everyone else to look for the car or any possible way out of the forest. He added, "When the sun sets, I'll light a fire, so come over to it." Seo wasn't trying to please anyone anymore. He wasn't building relationships, because deep down he knew, what's the point of making bonds with people who would disappear again? In the end, he would always be alone. As the sun set, Seo lit the fire. After searching for the car, they all returned and saw the fire, Seo sitting beside it, the others asleep. But only Seo was awake, his eyes wide with fear. He feared the unending regression, the infinite loop of time. He knew this ability had to be removed and wondered if it would vanish if he somehow returned to Earth. But seeing how he always regressed back to this moment on the ascension path, he didn't know how to go home. He remembered what the old cultivator had said. When the ascension gate opens, nearby spaces destabilize. Ordinary humans could have been caught in spatial storms. Realizing that the ascension gate exists, Seo thought that it must be related to why they fell into this world. And maybe, just maybe, they could return to their original world using it. He decided that first, he must grow stronger. As an ordinary mortal, he couldn't accomplish anything. He needed to become a cultivator like Director Kim and start cultivating. Once he gained a longer lifespan through cultivation, he would be able to research the Ascension Gate properly. Seo came out of the cave at night, and while looking at the sky, he decided that he would become a cultivator and go to the Ascension Gate. The next day, as the sun rose, Seo left the cave and ventured into the forest. He went to the same place where he had previously found those 1,000-year-old ginsengs. He dug out as many as he could and began eating them immediately without stopping. By eating them, Seo could feel strong chi quakes within his core. In his previous life, he hadn't known any heart methods, so eating these yellow bamboo roots would have done nothing. But now, using the dragon vein chi method that Director Kim had made for him, he could break through the blocked chi passageways. Seo's heart, which had been extremely polluted, slowly began to cleanse itself. It started beating like it had when he was born. Seo began sweating heavily as he cultivated, but he understood. It wasn't easy to heal a body soaked in preservatives, fast food, and stress. Still, he didn't give up and continued. After eating those ginsengs, he went to train his body. He took a tree branch and, using rocks, carefully carved it into the shape of a sword. Looking at the somewhat sword-like stick, Seo thought, that should do the work. He started swinging his sword, remembering the training he had done in his previous life with Director Kim. He recalled his footwork and the way he used to swing his blade. In his past life, he had only been an average second-rate martial artist, and since he hadn't practiced near the end of his life, his skills had dulled. Of course, he wasn't completely helpless. He swung his wooden sword at a nearby tree using the Severing Mountain Sword first form. With just a wooden sword, Seo cut into the tree and created a deep mark. He could do this because the martial arts from his previous life were still all in his head. So, improving his skills was just a matter of time. But unknown to Seo, his sword practice had been seen by Director Kim, who had wandered into the forest. Director Kim was utterly shocked and called out from behind, asking, "What was that just now?" He ran up to Seo, asking, "How did you slash a tree with a wooden stick? Just what is that strength?" Seeing how excited Director Kim was, Seo smiled inside, thinking, "This is the man who will instruct me to become a cultivator." Seo turned to Director Kim and asked if he wanted to try learning this technique. Hearing that, Director Kim's face lit up with excitement. He asked Seo, "Can I really do it?" But before Seo could reply, something suddenly appeared and destroyed the tree where Seo had been practicing. It was none other than the nine-tailed fox. The nine-tailed fox glared at them angrily and shouted, "Filthy humans! How dare you play around in front of the master of this forest?" Seeing the nine-tailed fox, Director Kim was completely stunned. And not just him, even Seo grew very nervous. He had completely forgotten about the nine-tailed fox. In his second life, the nine-tailed fox had mercilessly bitten off Seo's arm. At that moment, Seo knew the only thing he could do now was endure, as the fox tore apart his arm and slightly eased its pain by applying pressure to his own acupoint, because he knew he was weak. In his first life, and even in his second, he was weak. But now, in this third life, as the nine-tailed fox appeared before him, Seo took a deep breath and walked toward it. Scared, everyone called out to Seo from behind, telling him not to go there. But Seo didn't listen to them and continued toward the nine-tailed fox. Even now, in his third regression, he still didn't know how his second life had ended up that way. In his previous life, Seo had decided to become a cultivator after reaching the five-path core. But even after learning martial arts under the best master for over 100 years, he was barely considered a second-rank mastery warrior. Seo grabbed one arm with the other and used his strength to cut off his own arm, because he knew that compared to the people gathered here, his talent was trash. Seeing Seo cut off his own arm, everyone was shocked and terrified. Seo offered the severed arm to the nine-tailed fox to eat, because whether it took 1,000 years or 10,000, he was determined not to give up. Seeing Seo willingly offer his own arm, the nine-tailed fox laughed and said, "Human, you know your place. You know how to offer yourself as a sacrifice." The nine-tailed fox then decided to have a taste of Seo's arm. Hearing that, Seo silently resolved to offer his arm to the fox until the day he surpassed its strength. After the fox ate Seo's arm, it allowed them to stay and then disappeared. Seo didn't care about the others. He simply went to a quiet place in the forest and kept swinging his sword. After a few days, the cultivators healed his arm and escorted his colleagues away. But Seo didn't eat, sleep, or rest. He kept swinging his sword. The only reason he stopped swinging on the fourth day was because the Sea Dragon King arrived. Seo greeted the Sea Dragon King with respect and said, "This lowly mortal dares to ask the Sea Dragon King a question." Seeing how respectful Seo was, the Sea Dragon King allowed him to speak. Seo asked, "It seems the Sea Dragon King wishes to take Miss O." But Miss O is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots, and ordinary humans cannot live longer than 100 years. So, what are your intentions toward her? Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King laughed and said Co was quite an observant mortal, someone who understood the state of cultivators well. But he told them not to worry, because once Miss O accepted his blood, she would awaken spiritual roots suitable for her. Co was surprised to hear that and asked the Sea Dragon King if perhaps he could give them a chance as well, since Miss O was from the same hometown, and maybe they too might possess some hidden ability. Hearing that, the Sea Dragon King smiled and told Co to listen carefully. Just as he said that, Co felt an overwhelming pressure on his chest and collapsed to the ground. The Sea Dragon King said, "I will say one thing out of concern. Do not carelessly express your opinions to a high-ranking cultivator like me. We have lived for hundreds or even thousands of years. We see what mortals cannot see. We know what mortals do not know." He looked at Co with glowing green eyes and continued, "You have a good temperament, so I'll let it slide. But there are cruel ones who, just because your eyes met theirs, would tear you apart like insects and kill you." Saying that, the Sea Dragon King walked out of the cave with Miss O, then transformed into his dragon form and flew back into the sky. Seeing the Sea Dragon King's true form, Director Kim was completely shocked. The next day, as the weather cleared and everyone came out of the cave, they encountered the old cultivator riding the mechanical lion. As the old cultivator appeared, Co stepped forward, greeted him, and asked, "Our colleague Miss Kim is just an ordinary person without spiritual roots. So how could she possibly become your disciple?" Hearing that, the old cultivator laughed and took out an elixir, telling Co that it was a very precious elixir capable of opening spiritual channels. If one took it, even an ordinary person might gain the chance to become immortal. Co was shocked to hear that there was another way to become a cultivator. The old cultivator explained that it was possible for mortals to reach the realm of the five-path core by pushing their martial arts to the extreme, but that path took too long and the results were unsatisfactory, so this method was the best. After telling them everything, the old cultivator opened a portal to the mortal world and sent them into it, saying both of them were useless to him now, so they should get lost. Both Co and Director Kim fell into the teleportation portal, and Miss Kim could only watch them disappear, screaming. Co lost consciousness there, and the next time he opened his eyes, he found himself hanging from a tree branch above the ground. He looked ahead and saw a vast forest with some buildings in the middle. Seeing that, Co realized that this was the southwestern route army of the Yon Kingdom, his past life. Just like in the second regression, he had wandered all over the Yon Kingdom with Director Kim. Having traveled the Yon Kingdom for over 100 years, there were almost no places he didn't know now. Co climbed down from the tree and woke up Director Kim. After waking him up, both of them headed toward a nearby castle. Seo explained the situation to Director Kim, who seemed flustered, but likely because so much had happened already, he accepted most of it. A few days later, they arrived at the nearest Tiger Wall Castle. There, they sold herbal medicine from the Immortal Ascending Village and bought a house. Seo began teaching Director Kim how to write and speak the language, as well as how to use the Severing Mountain Blade, which Director Kim had originally created in his second regression. Seo then modified the Severing Mountain Sword to better suit the weapon Kim used. Seo felt a bit disappointed with himself as he watched Director Kim, because Director Kim had reached the Three Blossoms Crown Peak only 3 months after starting martial arts training, while someone like Seo had spent 2 entire lifetimes just training and barely reached the first rate. After Director Kim reached peak level, he got excited and said, "If it's now, I think I could even beat you." Hearing that, Seo smiled, realizing that the man in front of him was not the same big brother he once served in a past life. This Director Kim was mentally much younger than Seo. In terms of how long Seo had lived, he was now old enough to be Director Kim's grandfather. So Seo decided that he shouldn't stay with him in this life. He gave Director Kim martial arts cultivation scrolls and the exhausting record of transcending, a book Kim had created in his previous life. He told Director Kim that from today onwards, he would be going his own way. Hearing that, Director Kim was shocked and asked Seo, "What do you mean by that? Did I make a mistake? Is that why you're leaving? What's the reason?" When Director Kim asked about the reason, Seo remembered what had happened in his first regression. Director Kim had become the Martial Alliance leader but fell into despair after losing to the cultivators. The second regression wasn't much different. Director Kim developed the record of transcending cultivation and exhausting martial arts, then created the record of martial arts surpassing through cultivation. He fought against the cultivators, but in the end, he was overwhelmed by a stronger one and fell to the ground. After that, Director Kim disappeared, saying he would become a cultivator, abandoning the path of martial arts. And Seo thought, maybe this life would end up the same. This time, he no longer wanted to see his brother Kim fall into that same despair again. So Seo made an excuse, telling Director Kim that he wanted to travel alone and improve his skills. Hearing that, Director Kim asked Seo if he couldn't do that with him, questioning how he was supposed to live without Seo. Seo told Director Kim that with his martial arts skills at the current level, he should be able to live well. Seo reminded him that he had already taught him how to speak, write, and even martial arts. Now that Director Kim was a top expert, there was nothing more to worry about. But Director Kim still wasn't convinced. He asked Seo if he really had to be separated from his hometown friends again. Seo was surprised to hear that. So he told Director Kim that starting from today, once every 2 years, they should meet at this house. Hearing that, Director Kim finally agreed. After persuading Director Kim, who was feeling lonely, Seo then left the house. Sometime later, a disciple of the 8 Stronghold Pavilion came out, asking, "What's this commotion in front of the 8 Stronghold Pavilion?" The person he asked was Seo. Seo greeted him and told the disciple that he had come to request a duel at the 8 Stronghold Pavilion. Hearing this, that disciple started laughing and told Seo, "This pavilion is not a place where just anyone can show up." But before that disciple could finish his words, Seo drew his sword and swung it, cutting down the disciple's blade in a single strike, shocking everyone nearby. After cutting the blade, Seo asked the disciple, "Do I still look like a nobody to you?" Seo had made up his mind. He was determined that he would definitely become stronger. After challenging the 8 Stronghold Pavilion and cutting there, Disciple's Blade SEO was welcomed inside the 8 Stronghold Pavilion. Once inside, a girl comes TK escort him. She asked him to please come to the inner quarters, saying the sect leader is waiting there. SEO followed that girl to the inner quarters, and that girl leads him to a arena where the sect leader was waiting for him. Their audience were the disciples of 8 Stronghold Pavilion. When the sect leader saw Seo, he smiles and said he was curious who this first-rate master would be. But Seo is such a young junior. Seo greets the sect leader saying this humble one. Seo Yoon-hyun greets the sect leader of Palgyeongguk. Here that sect leader laughs and praised SEO saying his energy is extraordinary. SEO also praised the sect leader saying his energy is also extraordinary, and asked him to please grant him his guidance. AECT leader immediately took out his weapon. His weapon was a spear whip. Sect leader swings his spear whip and told so that he will begin first. SEO also took out his sword. Sect leader moved very fast and attacked at SEO's legs, but SEO quickly dodged his attack, but it was sect leader's main attack. As SEO dodged and was in mid-air, sect leader infused energy into the spear whip and attacks. His attack was aimed at SEO's head that surprised him, but SEO moved his sword with lightning speed and defected his attack easily. Disciples of the 8 Stronghold Pavilion get shocked to see that their sect leader's 9-section whip was blocked with a sword, looking at SEO reaction speed. Sect leader was impressed, saying, "Young warrior, you have reached the state of sword-body unity, and is at the late stage of first rate." SEO also praised the sect leader for completely integrating with martial arts, and thanks to that, SEO have seen a new technique. Sect leader laughs and told SEO that to be at the same level as him, the sect leader, at such a young age, SEO truly is a genius. Hearing the sect leader calling him genius, SEO laughs because being called a genius is not a compliment to him. It might be surprising that he, who appears to be in his late 20s, have reached a level that takes decades of training. SEO smiles and thanked sect leader for complimenting his insufficient talent, because he knows that in reality, he is merely one of the countless mediocre dullards in this world. Heaven did not grant him talent, but even as such a dullard, through regression, he was able to train his martial arts to a level comparable to a genius. But SEO thinks that regression perhaps is both his ability and his opportunity. Therefore, he decided to be a genius. He points his sword at sect leader and said, "Now he will use sword energy." Sect leader also told him that he will go all out too. SEO used Duan Yu sword, art's first move, and strikes at the sect leader. Sect leader quickly moved to his right and dodged his attack. Nutseo didn't give him any change and used second move, entering the mountain and attacks from below. Second leader blocks his strike with spear whip and moved back. SEO charges again and used third move, ascending the vein to attack. Sect leader again blocked his attack. He then takes a step back and unleashed his energy, infusing it into his spear whip to attack. He swings his spear whip with lightning speed and continuously attacks from many directions, trying to put pressure on SEO. But SEO didn't fall short and block all his attacks. Sect leader was shocked, seeing that, wondering, what is this monstrous sword art that he can't break through? Sect leader again aimed at SEO's legs, tried to shake his balance, but it was no use as SEO jumped and dodged again. While SEO was in midair, he used his Duan Yu sword's 7th move. Deed Mountain and charged straight at sect leader with his speed. It looked like SEO was attacking with thousands of sword, and the sect leader could not dodge. The sect leader could not predict SEO's sword, and barely dodged slight, getting his cheeks cut, seeing that disciples of 8 Stronghold Pavilion get shocked. Saying this can't be. SEO's sword speed was getting faster with each move. SEO used his 11th move, destroying the ground. Sect leader jumped and dodged his attack. Disciples were stunned, seeing that it's not just the speed, the sword is gaining destructive power and speed. SEO again charges and attacks with infused sword. Sect leader blocks his swords with his infused spear whip. Their collision released huge amounts of energy. After take CO's attack, head on sect leader's hand starts shaking, seeing that SEO decide to finish it. Here, he jumped high into the sky and used his 12th move, 7 lights emerging peak. Seeing him, sect leader also attacks. But SEO swings his energy-infused sword with so much force and speed that it cut down the sect leader's spear whip into thousands pieces, completely shocking the sect leader. Not just him. All the disciples of the 8 Stronghold Pavilion were shocked, seeing that CO's attack not only cut down sect leader's spear whip, it also cut his hand. Sect leader grabbed his hand in pain and declared that he conceded his defeat. Hearing that, SEO immediately put away his sword and greets the sect leader, saying it was a good opportunity. Saying that he left the arena, their Mac has completely destroyed the arena. After defeating the sect leader of the 8 Stronghold Pavilion, CO left the sect. As he was walking out of the sect, everyone was looking at him in shock. This was a very clean fight. SEO remembers that Palgyeongak was famous even in his previous life as a righteous sect that didn't engage in cowardly acts, so he decided to try visiting a demonic sect next. Thinking through these martial arts duels, in this life, he must reach the peak realm. As slowly time passed, CO visited about 4 more small sects in Seogyeongseong. Among them, he lost in duels at Eoliubo and Hwayongmun, and won against sects like Gaijubong and Yukjeolbo. And then he went to Hoadangpa. There he fought a warrior. He first cut down that warrior's blade. CO sends him flying. That warrior goes flying towards his sect master. Because of SEO's powerful attack, that warrior get unconscious, seeing that the sect leader. If Hoadongpa laughs, saying, "So the young first-rate master who's been challenging people to duels all over Seogyeongseong recently was you." After all, he told CO that he have seen his skill well. CO greets the sect leader, saying he too have learned a lot. Just then many warriors comes out of the door behind the sect leader. Sect leader, ask SEO if he is ready, because now it's the turn of the 10 elders. Seeing that, SEO gets surprise. Wondering what is this? Is this the demonic sect's way? He asked the sect leader that didn't the duel just end with his victory, and he have never heard of continuous battles or a 10-on-1 duel. With a smirk, sect leader said, "Really, didn't you just hear?" Hearing that, SEO realized that this guy is playing word games. He tried to scare the sect leader, saying if he widely announced today's cowardice to other sects, Hoadangpa's reputation will plummet. Sect leader laughs and told SEO that he don't care because SEO will get injured during the duel here, and that injury will flare up, and he will die of tetanus. He told SEO that the people will believe that their sect have taken great care for SEO, and despite their best efforts, SEO unfortunately passed away. As those then elders surrender, SEO sect leader laughs, telling him that how can a dead man spread a different rumor? This situation was even more than SEO had expected. They were crazy bastards. All the elders points there. Swords at CO, and the sect leader told him if they kill him here, it won't affect their reputation. It sounds very dangerous, but SEO smiled because this is also why he came here. He pulled out his sword and asked sect leader to come at him, saying he will accept this absurd duel. All the elders charged at CO, and from then on, they start a real fight as the sun sets in Hoadongpa region. The streets light up in joy. People were enjoying their night, drinking at inns. A drunk man told his friend that he heard that the young master who was challenging every sect to fight went to duel the Hoadangpa this time, saying what a pity for such a young talent. His friend agrees, saying to challenge an illegal organization like the evil sect to a duel is just asking for death. Their third friend told them that's how it usually is, isn't it? When one is young, they believe this world will go their way. Something like that kind of innocence. A guy from another table stands up, saying that young man just relied on his skill and acted rashly, bringing about his own death. The Hoadangpa may seem like a sect on the outside, but inside, it's no different from a bandit's den. He's probably buried by now. while they were talking. Just then someone entered the inn wearing shoes soaked in blood. The waiter turned to welcome that new guest but get shocked seeing him. It was SEO completely soaked in blood. With small injuries around his body, he ordered one bowl of noodles. Everyone in the inn gets shocked seeing SEO. Waiter nervously ask him please come in and sit down. SEO goes to sit down, and as he passed by everyone lowered their head not looking him into eyes. But it was normal reaction because SEO had a very angry expression. He was angry at those crazy bastards of Hoadangpa. He really almost died, not just 10-1, but they even cowardly poisoned their weapons and injured his back with it. It's a good thing SEO learned top-tier medicine when he was a strategist for the Martial Alliance. If he hadn't taken the antidote pills and stimulants his prepared beforehand, he would have died. He killed all 10 of the elders. But then, with that crazy old man's final desperate act, he shouted for his disciples, kill SEO somehow. All the miscellaneous soldiers of the sect, carrying spears and arrows, formed a battle formation and charged. SEO just fought like a beast, not caring for technique or anything to survive. Even so, SEO survived. He cut the meridians of the ones who were still breathing, crippling them so they won't come looking for revenge, and he killed their sect leader while eating the noodles. He saw his hand shaking, maybe because he took too many stimulants. The tension just won't subside. He sighs, knowing that he won't be able to sleep for the next few days. He grabbed his sword again, knowing that he need to have another duel with another orthodox sect. After eating, he walked out of that inn, showing everyone a large cut on his back. Everyone was so scared that they could not say anything, seeing that the young master, after his fierce battle with the Hoadangpa, ate noodles and immediately left for another duel. That crazy young man was widely talked about among many people, making Seogyeong City buzz with excitement, and people gave that mad master a fitting nickname, Infinite Fighting Monster Seo Yoon-hyun. SEO was continuously fighting, knowing that he have no talent and the path to the pinnacle he seek is infinitely distant. Therefore he must constantly fight and approach that realm by crossing the boundaries of life and death. Seo thinks that a person without talent must go mad to overcome the wall. If there is no talent, there must be madness. That is the only way for a dullard to catch up to a genius. And so, Seo scoured Seogyeong City and various parts of Yongguk, engaging in duels several times a day, regardless of orthodox or evil sects. And like that, 5 years passed. 5 years later, suddenly there was a blast in front of a house. It was SEO who jumped into the air and used his mountain-breaking sword, Art's 14th form, Q Mountain Heartstream. He collects energy from the nature. Its energy is like a mountain. Its heart is like the heavens. But just doing so, Seo started to struggle. The form of sword thread that can only be used upon reaching the pinnacle. Just briefly manifesting it puts an enormous strain on the mind. But he knows that if he don't do it this way, he can't catch up. Just then a black figure appeared behind Seo and comes to attack. SEO turns and used his sword to block that figure's attack. But that attack was so powerful that cracks appeared in SEO's sword. He went flying, crashing on the ground and hit a wall. The collision was so strong that it created a hole on the wall. In a single strike, all his sword energy was shattered. While laughing, that figure walks towards Seo and said, "Your reputation precedes you. I had quite high hopes, but you're still very clumsy, young Master Seo, the infinite fighting monster." That figure comes out of the smoke and told SEO that he thinks he won. His was this cautious because his opponent was the greatest under heaven, Kim Young-hoon. SEO was amazed by Director Kim's crazy talent. He stands up and congratulates Director Kim, saying he have become even stronger than last year. Well, he was right because Director Kim complete transformation in just 5 years. Looking at cut marks on his hands, SEO wonders what on earth did he himself do in those 5 years? His realm is still at the top tier, with a sad expression. SEO accepts that talent is truly something that makes a person miserable, them after they calm down. SEO asked Director Kim what brings him here. Because didn't they agree to meet every 2 years? Director Kim told SEO after attaining the 5 energies converging to the origin and visiting great sects of Yangguo, he have realized one thing. SEO asked him what is it. Director Kim told SEO it's the fact that there's no one above him in this Yongguk. Now, no one is even a match for a single one of his moves, and so he was planning on creating a sect or organization of some kind, and he wanted to offer SEO a seat, but SEO immediately declined, saying he is comfortable with his current state. Looking at Director Kim Seo though, it seems he's already developed the martial lord's disease. He knows that if he accept that offer, in this life too, I'll surely become something like a strategist or vice sect leader and work like a dog. But to reach the pinnacle with his talent, every minute and second is precious. Director Kim told Seo that it might be difficult to meet SEO once he establishes his organization. And then he started persuading SEO, saying he could always stick around and give him guidance duels. But SEO declined, telling Director Kim, no matter what offer he make, he is not taking it. Hearing that, Director Kim get very sad. It was a good offer from Director Kim, but SEO declined because he have gotten plenty of his teachings from his past life, and what he need now is real-life experience. In SEO's past life, Director Kim told him that once he enter the late stages of first rate, he should endeavor to experience as much real combat as possible. So this life, SEO decided to merely watch Director Kim's saga from afar, and continued on his own endless journey for battle. And so another 20 years passed. At a rainy day, Director Kim arrived at the old house where SEO and he meets. He opened the old house door and told SEO he looked pale who was waiting there. SEO had turned little old, and there were many cut marks on his face. But most of all, he had a very depressing expression because he finally realized that his talent is a talent abandoned by the heavens. SEO sat cross-legged on the mat, his hand firmly gripping the hilt of a glowing blue sword. Despite his countless hours of relentless training, frustration clouded his expression. From across the room, Director Kim, with his long hair tied neatly at the back, looked at him and asked, "Have you still not broken through to the next realm?" SEO tightened his grip on the glowing sword, his eyes filled with determination. He acknowledged to himself that his understanding of sword chi had already far surpassed that of others in the league. Yet, despite his progress, he couldn't help but feel the sting of inadequacy. He still couldn't last beyond 3 moves against the high-rank masters. Director Kim placed a hand thoughtfully against his chin, his brows furrowing slightly. After a brief moment of contemplation, he muttered to himself, finding the situation unusual. How strange, he thought. Director Kim observed SEO closely, noting the way he now moved as one with his sword, far more in tune than ever before. Yet, despite this progress, SEO still hadn't reached the peak realm. For someone with as much real combat experience as him, Director Kim thought, it should have been more than enough to break through. A faint, self-mocking smile curved SEO's lips as sweat trickled down his face. Inwardly, he acknowledged the bitter truth. Yeah, this is my talent, he thought to himself. Blood trickled from SEO's nose as he forced a faint, bitter smile. In his heart, he acknowledged the cruel truth. He possessed a talent that the heavens themselves had cast aside. SEO's grip on his sword tightened, his expression strained as blood trickled from his nose. Half a day, that was his limit. If only he could sustain his sword chi effortlessly from dawn till dusk, without faltering, perhaps then he might finally catch a glimpse of the path forward. Director Kim handed SEO a thick, red-bound book, his tone filled with sincerity. He expressed his genuine hope for SEO's success, then added as he passed it over, "And here." SEO sat reading the red-bound book, his expression thoughtful. Director Kim explained that it contained insights he had gained from his recent battle against cultivators. By enduring their spells and dragging the fight out for as long as possible, he had managed to hold on and ultimately escape. SEO weighed the thick red-bound book in his hands. It was nearly as substantial as the main volume of the Record of Martial Arts, surpassing through Cultivation and Leaps, an evolved version of the Record of Transcending Cultivation and Exhausting Martial Arts. With a doubtful look, he questioned Director Kim, wondering if he had truly gained so much insight merely from successfully escaping. Standing in the doorway with lightning flashing behind him, Director Kim spoke with a grave tone. To him, cultivators were like natural disasters in human form. Escaping from such a force was no small feat. Naturally, the insight gained from surviving such an ordeal would be immense. SEO assured Director Kim that he would keep the book safe and pass it on to future generations. With sincerity in his voice, Director Kim responded, thanking him, "Thank you, Eun-hyun." Standing at the entrance of the building with his sword in hand, Director Kim looked out into the storm. He declared his intention to seek out the cultivators once more, his voice steady despite the danger ahead. With a faint, almost grim smile, he added that he hoped they would both be alive the next time they met. Before leaving, Director Kim turned to SEO, his gaze steady despite the falling rain. He offered a final piece of advice for reaching the peak realm. Every scene, every space he passed through and experienced, SEO needed to engrave them deeply into his mind, never letting those impressions fade. SEO's eyes widened in surprise as he processed Director Kim's words. Almost in disbelief, he echoed the thought aloud. Was he truly meant to imprint all the scenery around him into his mind? Director Kim explained further, likening the practice to how one instinctively takes note of the surrounding terrain during battle or sparring. Normally, a fighter would store the layout of their surroundings in their mind for tactical use. What he was suggesting, however, was to turn that skill into second nature, something Seo could do constantly, not just in the heat of combat. Seo's eyes widened in disbelief as he tried to grasp the enormity of the advice. Maintaining sword chi alone already felt like it was about to make his head explode, and now, on top of that, he was being told to keep his spatial awareness sharp and steady at all times. The thought left him wondering how anyone could possibly manage such a feat. A wave of pressure and strain built inside Seo's mind, the thought gnawing at him relentlessly. If this keeps up, will my head really explode? He wondered, feeling the weight of the task pressing against his very limits. Seo shook his head firmly. No. There had to be a reason why the strongest martial artist under heaven had entrusted him with such a task. It wasn't meaningless. There was purpose behind the challenge. From that day forward, Seo committed himself to a new discipline. He made a conscious effort to remember every space that came into view, training his mind to retain every detail. Over time, he began to recall exactly where everything was. Seo moved through the bustling streets, the vibrant scene unfolding around him. Every detail, the flow of the crowd, the arrangement of buildings, the colors and sounds, he committed to memory, sharpening his awareness with each passing moment. As Seo walked through the crowded streets, he paid attention even to the smallest details, the sound of footsteps against the tiled ground, the shuffle of shoes brushing past one another. Every movement and sound became a part of the mental map he was building. Passing through the dense forest, Seo noted the rustle of leaves and the way sunlight filtered through the canopy. Every sound, every flicker of movement in the greenery was etched into his memory as part of his growing awareness of the world around him. Seo walked steadily through the forest, his breaths deep and measured, sword in hand. It had been 5 years since he began the relentless practice of maintaining both his sword chi and his spatial awareness. 5 years of unbroken discipline and focus. Seo swayed slightly, a wave of dizziness washing over him. Perceiving every fragment of spatial information that entered his field of vision was exhausting, far from an ordinary task, and certainly not an easy one. It demanded constant focus, pushing his mind to its limits. Seo realized his perception had grown sharper than ever before. It was no longer limited to visual information. Now, even the faintest sounds reached him with clarity. The rustling of leaves, the distant chirping of insects, the subtle crunch of footsteps, all of it became part of the world he was learning to perceive. A shadow of doubt crossed Seo's mind. Will I even be able to perform martial arts properly in this condition? He wondered. Yet, he reminded himself that there were no more sects left to confront, at least for now. For nearly 3 decades, Seo journeyed across the entire Yan Kingdom, challenging minor sects in sparring matches and, on occasion, testing his skills against the major ones. By now, there was hardly a sect in the kingdom that he hadn't visited. And now, Seo made his living by collecting bounties. His skills had brought him to the point where he was not only confronting outlaws, but also capturing dangerous bandits with ease. In his dizzy state, he found himself forced to battle enemies who attacked without restraint, using any means or methods to kill. The thought gnawed at him. Could he truly survive under such relentless conditions? One of the bandits spotted him and shouted, "Brother, it's him!" Another roared, "Found you, you bastard!" But Seo remained calm, gripping his sword tightly. Either way, he thought, this is the path I've chosen. The towering bandit leader stepped forward, his broad frame draped in a leopard-patterned robe, eyes locked on Seo with murderous intent. Resting a massive blade on his shoulder, he sneered and pointed his second sword toward his target. "You're dead now!" he roared, his voice rumbling through the forest as the other bandits closed in behind him. Seo steadied his breathing, sword chi swirling around him despite the pounding in his head. Even if I die, he thought, this is the path I've chosen. Facing the armed men before him, his grip tightened. Isn't this the path I must walk? Blood sprayed through the air as screams of agony pierced the forest. The clash had begun, and the carnage was instant. 15 years had passed. Seo, now aged and bearing a weathered face marked by deep lines, gazed forward with a solemn expression. His gruff voice carried the weight of years as he quietly asked, "Did you survive, Director Kim?" His long hair tied neatly back and a deep scar etched across his face met Seo's gaze with a warm smile. In a confident yet light-hearted tone, he replied, "Yeah, this time too. It had been 45 years since SEO had returned to this life. As he calmly poured tea, his thoughts reflected on the changes within him. By now, his vision and hearing were sharper than ever, leaving no room for doubt. Even his sense of touch, taste, and smell had reached a state of refined perception, honed to near perfection over the decades. SEO's gaze fell upon the steaming cup of tea before him. Despite all the refinements his senses had achieved over the decades, he knew in his heart, but that's it. SEO's expression grew heavy, his eyes shadowed with the weight of regret. Even after all these years, he thought to himself, I still haven't become a master at the peak. SEO's eyes burned with fierce frustration, the weight of decades pressing down on him. The thought echoed relentlessly in his mind, rising into a silent roar. I still haven't. I still haven't. Director Kim sat across from SEO, a faint smirk playing on his lips as he sipped his drink. He explained that it seemed he had become wanted. Perhaps he had gotten a bit too famous among the cultivators. Two of them, he continued, had even gone so far as to set a trap and lie in wait for him. SEO recounted his experience with a measured tone. He explained that he had barely managed to escape the ambush, though he did succeed in leaving a small cut on one of his attacker's cheeks. Looking toward Director Kim, he remarked that surely Kim must have gained valuable insight from this encounter as well. Director Kim scoffed at the idea of insight, dismissing it as nonsense. Placing his hand on the cup, he admitted that, even now, he still couldn't defeat a judgment stage Taoist. If he failed to escape in such a fight, he knew the outcome. He would end up as nothing more than a corpse lying on the ground. Director Kim tilted his head back slightly, his expression thoughtful as he confessed what had been weighing on his mind lately. He admitted that the extreme state of the five-path core he had reached might, in fact, be the very end of the martial path itself. Director Kim reflected aloud, wondering if even the martial arts record SEO had first given him, one that claimed martial arts could surpass cultivation, was perhaps flawed. He questioned if SEO had ever shared his thoughts, that no matter how strong or skilled one became, martial arts alone could never truly defeat cultivators. For some reason, SEO found himself seeing a reflection of his own past and struggles in Kim Young-hoon. SEO observed that Kim Young-hoon clearly possessed a talent blessed by the heavens. In contrast, he reflected bitterly, he himself had been born with a talent abandoned by the heavens. SEO reflected that he and Kim Young-hoon possessed talents that were complete opposites, one blessed by the heavens, the other abandoned by them. Yet despite this stark contrast, he couldn't help but wonder, why does he look so much like me? SEO admitted his frustration at not knowing why he couldn't reach the peak realm. Director Kim considered this and noted that even after mimicking Sword Chi and adopting the perspective of the peak realm, SEO still couldn't attain it, and he still had no idea why. Under the quiet night sky, Director Kim suggested having a sparring match for old time's sake. SEO responded with a faint smile, saying it was the best thing he had heard in a long while. The moon hung high in the night sky, casting a gentle silver glow over the quiet forest below, as if silently bearing witness to the coming clash. The stillness of the night was shattered by a deafening clash, the air erupting with explosive force as their battle began, sending shockwaves rippling through the trees under the moonlit sky. SEO staggered back, clutching his side as pain surged through him. Gritting his teeth, he shouted in frustration, "Damn it! What the hell do you think the problem is?" Director Kim, standing with his sword in hand, admitted honestly that he didn't know the reason. By all rights, SEO should have become a peak master long ago. Blood dripped from SEO's mouth as he staggered, his voice sharp with confusion and urgency. What? What do you mean? How strange, how bizarre. Why is this happening? Director Kim wondered himself, struggling to comprehend. He said that even if SEO truly had no talent at all, this outcome still didn't make sense to him. Hearing that, SEO's eyes widened in shock and confusion. Director Kim placed a thoughtful hand on his chin, his gaze steady. Perhaps what you're missing, he suggested, is the right trigger. SEO repeated the word softly. Trigger, Director Kim explained. Something like desperation, or a driving force, something that could push you past the limits of your talent by drawing out extreme focus. SEO's rage exploded as he shouted, his voice echoing with decades of frustration. What kind of damn trigger are you even talking about? I've wielded a sword for over 50 years, my whole life. SEO's eyes burned with fury and desperation as he roared, and now you're telling me, what kind of trigger do I still need to yearn for, and how much more desperately? His voice trembled with raw emotion. I've risked my life and struggled all my life just to escape mediocrity, SEO roared with fervent intensity, raising his sword high. I've activated every meridian in my entire body. Now even when I sleep, I hold my sword and release sword energy. Even in my dreams, I've reached the point where I process every bit of scenery and information I see. SEO collapsed to his knees, his voice breaking with anguish. Then why? Why? Just why the hell? You're telling me the next realm won't reveal itself to me? Why? Why the hell not? SEO lay sprawled on the ground, his sword cast aside, his breath ragged. Even he know how pitiful it is for an old man nearly 70 to resent the heavens. His voice cracked with anguish. Why? Just why? Even after a lifetime of chasing the sword, yearning for that elusive next realm, SEO's grasp remained empty. His fingers clawed into the dirt as he growled through clenched teeth. Ugh! No matter how desperately he pursued it, he couldn't even begin to comprehend what that next realm truly was. Director Kim stood silently, sword in hand, gazing at Seo, who lay collapsed on the ground. His expression betrayed no words, only quiet contemplation, as the weight of Seo's struggle hung heavy in the night air. Director Kim turned away, his long hair swaying with the motion. With a swift, precise movement, his sword sliced through the air, sending sharp bursts of force into the trees ahead. The trunks split under the sheer power of his strikes, embers scattering in the night as the sound of tearing wood echoed through the forest. While sparring with him, Director Kim had devised a martial technique tailored to compensate for the SEO weaknesses. The markings of this new technique burned into the tree's surface, glowing faintly with heat and energy. It may not be much comfort, Director Kim said calmly, but I hope that learning this will bring you some peace of mind. Seo's eyes widened slightly as he read the glowing characters carved into the tree. Mountain King's martial art and moon crossing step, he muttered, recognition dawning in his voice. His grip tightened on his sword, a mixture of awe and reluctance filling his gaze. He looked toward the place where Director Kim had been standing moments ago and sighed bitterly. And now, you'll disappear again, just like that. And now, you'll disappear again, just like that, 5 years later. The serene courtyard basked in the gentle warmth of autumn, the once vivid greens of the surrounding forest now transformed into a tapestry of gold, crimson, and amber. SEO tightened his grip on his sword, his weathered eyes filled with the weight of countless years. It had been 50 years since he had returned to this life, and now he could feel the end drawing near. He knew there was not much time left before death would finally claim him. SEO stood in the open courtyard, gazing upward as if speaking to someone beyond the mortal realm. Brother Young-hoon, you died, didn't you? He murmured, his voice heavy with sorrow. A deep sigh escaped him. So this is the fate the heavens have chosen for both you and me. SEO's gaze softened as he reflected on the harsh truth of his journey. With my talent, he thought, no matter how hard I struggled, this was as far as I could go. His expression grew somber as he considered his fallen comrade. And your talent too, perhaps that was its limit. Walking away with a sword in hand, SEO spoke with a voice heavy with resignation. No matter how much ordinary men like us struggle, we can't escape the fate the heavens have set for us. From behind, a voice cut through the air in sharp defiance. What kind of nonsense are you spouting, Seo Yun-hyun? It was Director Kim. Blood streamed down Director Kim's face as he staggered forward, desperation blazing in his eyes. Wait! He cried out, his voice hoarse and trembling. A violent cough shook his body, forcing blood from his lips. SEO's eyes widened in alarm as he caught sight of Director Kim's grave injuries. Your condition is serious, he exclaimed urgently. Without hesitation, he added, I need to get my medical tools from home. But suddenly something grabbed Seo from behind. His expression tightened in alarm. His eyes widened, sensing something unexpected. In an instant, SEO was hurled into the air by Director Kim, and just as they fly into the sky, the ground erupted in a violent explosion of dirt and debris, the shockwave echoing across the courtyard. As they were hurled through the air, SEO's eyes widened in shock. What? He thought in disbelief. His gaze locked on Director Kim, and a chilling realization struck him. Weren't both of his arms cut off? Director Kim shouted over the rushing wind, his voice filled with urgency. Look, Un-hyun, that crazy cultivator bastard is chasing after us. A bitter laugh escaped him despite the danger. This is the price I paid for blasting off one of the judgment stage cultivator's arms. Blood streamed down Director Kim's face as he let out a wild, almost manic laugh. He roared. His eyes burned with a fierce sense of accomplishment. I dealt meaningful damage to a judgment stage cultivator. Director Kim's bloodshot eyes burned with a wild, unrestrained fervor. I saw with my own eyes the realm beyond the five-path core, he declared, his voice trembling with exhilaration. The one no martial artist can reach, his expression twisted into manic laughter. I saw it with my own eyes. SEO's eyes widened in shock, his face frozen in disbelief as he looked on, utterly stunned by what he had just heard. Director Kim, his face bloodied and his robes torn, shouted for attention with a mix of triumph and desperation. Above him, a brilliant blue sphere crackled with immense energy, radiating an overwhelming power. With a wild, almost manic expression, he declared that he had risked his life and burned away his very life force to reach this moment. Seo's eyes widened in shock, his face etched with disbelief and awe. Staring intently at the sight before him, he muttered in a breathless tone that it was enhanced chi. Director Kim declared with pride that he had once used this very power to shatter the arm of a core formation cultivator. Below them, the brilliant blue sphere surged with energy, radiating an overwhelming force as it hovered in the air. The attack crashed down with devastating force, obliterating the buildings in its path. Wood splintered, debris flew in all directions, and the structures crumbled into rubble under the sheer impact. The air was filled with the sound of destruction as chaos engulfed the area. Director Kim turned to Yoon-hyun, urging him to watch closely. As smoke and debris billowed in the distance, he declared with pride that what they had just witnessed was the culmination of his life's work, devoting himself entirely to the training of martial arts. Seo's expression softened with shock and sorrow as he gazed into the distance. His voice trembled, barely above a whisper, as he uttered in disbelief and grief that his house was gone. Seo looked upon the smoldering ruins, his heart heavy with loss. He reflected that he had invested every bit of money he had gathered over 50 years into this home, pouring his boundless fighting spirit into its creation. Director Kim, blood streaming down his face and his expression twisted with manic excitement, let out a triumphant laugh and shouted for them to look. He declared that he had traveled far and wide just to show this moment, because he had decided to entrust his will to them. In that moment, Seo felt his mind go blank as a surge of rage welled up inside him. Yet, he forced himself to remain composed, steadying his emotions as he focused on watching Director Kim's martial arts performance. The spot where a grand 3-story building once stood had been completely obliterated, vanishing in an instant without leaving even a trace behind. Amid the burning wreckage, Seo reflected grimly that it was fortunate there had been no servants in the house at the time. Otherwise, hundreds of lives would have been lost in that single devastating attack. Seo examined the wreckage, noting the faint blade traces left among the few remnants. Realization struck him. The ball of enhanced chi from earlier had been a concentrated fusion of thousands of blade energies. Seo was awestruck by the sheer power he had just witnessed. It was stronger than any martial arts technique Director Kim had ever shown him before, an unbelievable force that left him in disbelief. Director Kim, bloodied but resolute, explained that this was how he had managed to shatter the arm of a core formation cultivator. In the past, he had been forced to rely on ambushes or assassinations just to take down cultivators in the chi-building stage, but now he declared he could face them head-on. As the ground rushed up to meet them, Seo shouted in alarm that they were falling. Both he and Director Kim plummeted through the sky, their robes and hair whipping violently in the wind. The two crashed into the ground with tremendous force, sending debris and shockwaves exploding outward. The impact tore through the earth, scattering dirt, stone, and shattered branches into the air as the surrounding trees shook violently. Dust and debris slowly settled over the impact site. Splintered wood and scattered rocks lay strewn across the ground, while faint trails of smoke curled upward into the air, marking the aftermath of their violent fall. A crater marked the spot of their impact, dust still rising into the air as the red autumn leaves swayed gently in the breeze. From within the settling haze came a faint, earnest plea, asking not to forget these techniques. Bloodied and lying on the ground, Director Kim spoke with labored breaths. He said that these techniques were the culmination of his life's realizations and pleaded for his martial arts to be passed down to future generations. Seo knelt beside the fallen and bloodied Director Kim, his voice firm yet filled with concern. He told him that he had heard his words and urged him to stop talking, reminding him that his life was at stake. Perched high in the branches of a towering tree, a figure looked down with a cold, confident gaze and declared that they had found the ultimate martial spirit. They remarked with a hint of mockery that it was quite a terrible place to try and run to. Below, Seo stared upward, tension evident in his expression. The cultivator in blue looked down sharply and called out to Seo, addressing him as a civilian. His tone was cold and commanding as he declared that Director Kim was a criminal who had committed unspeakable crimes against the cultivators, ordering Seo to leave him there. Seo, his expression tense and wary, looked toward the cultivator and asked if he was there to punish Director Kim, or if perhaps he was an acquaintance of his. Without hesitation, Seo scooped up the wounded Director Kim and sprinted away at full speed. The ground blurred beneath his feet as he dashed forward, determined to escape before the cultivator could make a move. From his perch on the tree, the cultivator in blue clicked his tongue in irritation, calling the attempt pointless. Watching Seo carry Director Kim away, he wondered aloud if Seo had never heard about them from the ultimate martial spirit. The cultivator in blue let out a dark chuckle, deciding to treat the situation as entertainment. As ominous purple energy swirled around him, he taunted Seo, telling him to run as fast as he could. As Seo carried Director Kim away at full speed, looking back, Seo's eyes widened in shock. Gasping for breath, he began to utter in disbelief. Seo's eyes widened in horror as he spotted a horde emerging from the purple haze beneath the cultivator in blue. Their lifeless faces and glowing eyes left no doubt. These were corpses. His shock deepened as he recognized them for what they truly were, Jiangxi. Seo sprinted forward with Director Kim in his arms, gritting his teeth in frustration and muttering that he was too old for this. Behind them, the Jiangxi let out chilling screams and charged in relentless pursuit. As Seo ran with Director Kim in his arms, he panted heavily but still managed to speak. He asked if the title Ultimate Martial Spirit was something the cultivators had given him, remarking that it was quite a unique name. Seo, still catching his breath as he was carried away, exclaimed that it was bizarre. The ultimate martial spirit and the infinite fighting spirit, two legendary spirits now running for their lives from the Jiangxi. He couldn't help but point out just how strange the situation was. Seo, breathing heavily as he carried his companion on his back, urged desperately, "Never mind that. You need to stay awake. Please, say something." Behind them, the relentless Jiangxi closed in, their eerie movements and expressions making the chase even more harrowing. One of the Jiangxi lunged forward with a terrifying scream, its pale face twisted in rage and hunger, eyes glowing with an unnatural light as it reached out with clawed hands toward its prey. The Jiangxi lunged at Seo with a feral roar, its claws slashing through the air. Seo, gritting his teeth, twisted his body mid-stride, narrowly avoiding the attack while keeping hold of Director Kim he was carrying, and slicked off the Jiangxi's head with his sword. Then Seo kicked that Jiangxi's side with brutal force. The impact reverberating through his body sends the Jiangxi flying. That Jiangxi flung backward into the others. The force of the impact sent multiple Jiangxi tumbling to the ground in a heap. Seo ran through the forest, his breath ragged as he carried another on his back. "Damn it, you should be the one running with me on your back," he growled at Director Kim in frustration. "I'm gonna die from suffocation. Why did you have to get your arms cut off?" The Jiangxi refused to give up, their relentless pursuit echoing through the forest with shrill cries. Seo clenched his jaw, forcing himself to keep moving forward, his breathing heavy and ragged as he carried his companion on his back. Morning came and night faded away. Countless times the sun had risen and fallen, yet he kept running, boots pounding against the dirt as the relentless Jiangxi trailed close behind. Sweat dripped down Seo's face as his breath came in ragged gasps. Each inhale burned his lungs, but still, he pressed on. He skidded to a halt at the cliff's edge, staring down at the dizzying drop. "Damn it, it's so high up," he muttered, his voice tight with frustration, while the relentless pursuers clawed their way up behind him. From above, that cultivator floated effortlessly, his calm voice carrying a tone of mild surprise. "Shocking," he remarked. Below him, the grotesque Jiangxi snarled and hissed, their pallid faces twisted with hunger. The man continued, his gaze fixed on the exhausted Seo before him. "You, a mere civilian, managed to withstand the Jiangxi for 3 days and nights." The man's voice grew colder as he continued. "However, you cannot run anymore." His piercing gaze locked onto his target. "It's also futile to do so." The cultivator's voice was laced with finality as he declared, "The ultimate martial spirit is already dead." Seo, drenched in sweat and gasping for breath, clenched his teeth. His body trembled from exhaustion, yet he still held on to the hilt of his weapon, refusing to collapse. Seo's voice was weak yet steady as he stood at the cliff's edge, the weight of another person slung across his back. "No," he admitted, his breathing ragged. Then, with a faint, wry smile, he added, I'm a physician after all. The cultivator in blue fixed his gaze on Seo and asked coldly, "Then why were you running?" His tone carried no sympathy as he continued. "I am only interested in the ultimate martial spirit. I don't care about you. You could have just abandoned the corpse and run off." Seo lowered his head, a shadow falling over his eyes. A faint, trembling chuckle escaped his lips. His smile widened, the sound deepening into a steady, unsettling laugh. The cultivator in blue narrowed his eyes, his tone laced with suspicion as he stared at Seo. "You're laughing?" he asked, clearly unsettled by the sudden change in demeanor. Gripping the sword tightly, Seo reflected on his journey. The Severing Mountain Sword, the Dragon Vein Chi method, the Mountain Lord martial arts, and the Transcending Peak steps. He was able to reach this point despite being void of talent. Thanks to Director Kim's teachings, he was someone from Seo's hometown, as well as his martial mentor. Seo glared fiercely, his voice filled with defiance as he pointed his blade forward and said, "If you want to take my master's head, you'll have to take mine first." The cultivator in blue stood silently, his expression shadowed yet piercing, exuding an intense and oppressive aura without uttering a single word. The cultivator scoffed, his voice laced with disdain. "No one knows to fear the cultivators. Is it because you simply don't know any better, or is it that you've grown so old that fear no longer reaches you?" Behind him, Jiangxi with glowing eyes and twisted grins raised their arms, dark purple energy swirling ominously around them. The cultivator in blue stepped forward, his expression dark and unwavering. "All right, I'll show you," he declared, his voice carrying an ominous weight. Massive spectral hands formed behind him, wreathed in a menacing purple aura, as the undead horde snarled and lunged in anticipation. That cultivators possess the power to inflict a pain far worse than death. The cultivator in blue extended his will, and the colossal spectral hands lunged forward with terrifying speed. Their immense fingers curled as if to seize and crush everything in their path, the air around them distorting under the sheer force of his power. Seo's eyes widened in shock as a blur of motion tore through the air toward him. His grip on the sword tightened instinctively, but the sheer speed of the incoming strike left him with barely a moment to react. Seo's sharp eyes widened as realization struck him. His focus shifted instantly, a grim thought echoing in his mind. "He wasn't going after me." Director Kim's body trembling violently as if an unseen force was crushing him from above. That cultivator's hands turned into Director Kim's hands and it clawed at the air, and a sharp, panicked gasp escaped his lips. Director Kim staggered to his feet, his body trembling uncontrollably as a cold sweat dripped down his face. His eyes widened in disbelief at the overwhelming force pressing down on him, while Seo stood before him with a calm yet imposing presence, sword in hand. Behind them, the man in blue watched silently, his aura radiating an oppressive might. The cultivator in blue glared coldly, his voice dripping with contempt. "You parasite," he said, his tone sharp enough to cut through the air. "I'll make you pay the price for daring to look down on a cultivator." His eyes burned with unwavering resolve, promising a retribution far worse than his words could convey. Seo's face twisted with rage, his teeth clenched so tightly it was as if he wanted to crush them. His eyes burned with fury as he spat out his words. "You evil bastard!" Each syllable dripped with hatred, the weight of his anger threatening to erupt at any moment. With a twisted grin and a voice dripping with malice, the Director Kim gripped his sword tightly, his aura radiating bloodlust. Cultivator called Director Kim ultimate martial spirit and ordered him to kill your disciple. His words echoed like a cruel command, sealing his intent to pit master against student in a deadly betrayal. The possessed Director Kim threw his head back and let out a monstrous roar, jagged teeth bared as an inhuman sound tore from his throat. Wreathed in a sinister purple aura, he swung his weapon with devastating force toward Seo, who braced himself with his sword, his expression tense and unyielding. Seo glared up at the man in blue hovering above, his voice filled with fury as he demanded, "How dare you defile a dead man's legacy like this?" The cultivator looked down at Seo with a calm yet condescending smile, clearly enjoying Seo's expression. Meanwhile, Director Kim, his body radiating that same sinister purple aura, charged at Seo and clashed violently with him, their blades ringing in the cold air. Seo's thoughts remained steady despite the onslaught. Thankfully, his opponent couldn't use martial arts. Instead, he attacked with nothing but the raw, overwhelming strength that the cultivator's power had granted him, each strike driven purely by brute force rather than technique. The blade crashed against Seo's with overwhelming force, the impact reverberating through the air. Purple energy surged around Director Kim, amplifying every strike. But just that sheer force and speed, Co thought grimly, his arms straining under the pressure. It's hard for my old body to withstand. He gritted his teeth, his eyes blazing with determination as he struggled against the crushing force of the descending blade. Gripping his sword tightly, Seo felt the weight of dishonor pressing upon him. It's already an incredible disgrace to point my blade at Kim Young-hoon, he thought bitterly, his knuckles whitening against the hilt, especially when he's already dead. Seo's lips tightened as he spoke, apologizing in a solemn voice. But deep inside, his resolve hardened. He knew that if there was nothing else he could do, he had to end it as quickly as possible. Shifting his stance, Seo's grip firmed on the hilt as a surge of violet energy spiraled around him. His expression was calm yet resolute as he invoked his technique. Severing Mountain Sword. 21st Form. Heavenly Lake. He remembered that the 21st form of the Severing Mountain Sword was known as Heavenly Lake, a technique as majestic and vast as its name implied. When Director Kim had taught him this technique, Seo had once asked, all of the other forms are named after some mountain, peak, or valley. So why is the 21st form named after a lake? Back then, lying on the grass, Director Kim had gazed up at the sky and replied, Heavenly Lake. It reminds me of the heavenly lake atop Mount Baekdu. Seo had been curious at the time. Mount Baekdu, Director Kim had laughed and nodded. This world has a lake similar to Mount Baekdu's. Or maybe the name was also created by people from Korea, like us. A heavenly lake, its crystal clear surface mirroring the boundless blue sky above. Surrounded by towering, rugged cliffs, its tranquil waters stretched endlessly, embodying serene beauty. It was a lake so pure and still that it seemed to reflect the very heavens themselves. Seo gazed at his glowing blade, his voice calm yet resolute. The heavenly lake holds the view of the skies within its surface, but its nature remains unchanged. In his mind, he reflected on the teachings of the Severing Mountain Sword. The sky, symbolized in its doctrine, referred to the martial artist he was dueling, and the lake, which encompassed the sky's reflection, referred to his single strike. Before him, Director Kim lunged with ferocity, their blades moments from clashing. With a thunderous burst of energy, the strike connected, sending a violent shockwave rippling outward. Director Kim's eyes went wide in shock and agony as his body was engulfed by the overwhelming force, his scream tearing through the air while debris scattered in all directions. Seo's gaze was sharp, his grip steady on the hilt of his glowing sword as he recalled the essence of his technique. The heavenly lake of the Severing Mountain absorbs all the energy flowing in the opponent's veins into my sword energy for a single moment. His eyes narrowed with focus. And in that instant, it launches the enemy away while their energy becomes trapped within my blade. Seo's hands tightened around the hilt, purple energy swirling and crackling along the blade. It's a move I can use because I am a first-rate physician and a master at understanding the 8 chi veins, he thought, feeling the flow of power align perfectly with his strike. This was no ordinary technique. It was a move only he could perform, created specifically for him. Seo knew that if Young-hoon Hyung's corpse remained intact, it might continue to be used as a Jiangshi. That was why he couldn't allow a single piece of it to be left for that evil cultivator to exploit. His fingers tightened on the hilt as blue energy churned violently within the sheath. He drew upon that churning power, feeling the immense force build within him. His gaze hardened. To combine all of the Severing Mountain Sword's forms into a single attack, Seo surged forward, his movements sharp and precise as his blade carved through the air. Severing Mountain Sword, first form. Transcending peaks, with a burst of power, he channeled the form's essence, his strike carrying the force and grandeur of mountains rising beyond the clouds. His blade cleaved through the air in a brilliant arc of light, the force of the strike tearing into his opponent. The slash cut cleanly through Director Kim's body, the momentum carrying the attack past him as the sky split with its radiance. Seo unleashed a relentless sequence of strikes, each flowing seamlessly into the next. Second form, Entering Mountain. Third form, Ascending Vein. Fourth form, Flowing Ridge. Fifth form, Bouldered Cliff. Sixth form, Strange Stone. His blade carved through the battlefield, each form merging into the next with flawless precision. The ground split and shattered under the force, fragments of rock erupting into the air as arcs of sword light tore across the terrain. Director Kim let out a blood-curdling scream as countless deep gashes tore across his body in a crisscross pattern. Blood sprayed in every direction, his form trembling violently under the unrelenting assault of Seo's devastating strikes. Sio's eyes burned with fierce determination, his expression twisted with resolve. I'll cut him to pieces, so the cultivators can never defile his legacy further by turning his corpse into their puppet. Seeing this, the cultivator's face twisted with fury, his eyes blazing as he thrust his hand forward, purple-blue energy surging from his palm. "You insect!" he roared, his voice echoing like a thunderclap, the raw force of his rage and power aimed directly at his target. As he poured the pure purple-blue energy into Director Kim's body, it transformed into a monstrous figure that let out a guttural, ear-splitting roar. Its deformed, muscle-bound body trembled with rage, black tattered wings flaring menacingly from its back as dark energy rippled outward. From below, Sio stood unfazed, his white hair whipping in the turbulent air, staring up at the beast without a hint of fear. His expression hardened, beads of sweat running down his weathered face as he quickly assessed the situation. He's boosted him with even more power and speed, Sio thought grimly, his sharp eyes tracking the enemy's movements. There was no time to hesitate. He needed to dodge, and fast, but his initial instinct wavered, his thoughts shifting in an instant. No, what use is there in dodging? He realized grimly, his eyes locked onto the monstrous foe barreling toward him. My life will end soon. I'm already as good as dead. A flicker of resolve lit in his gaze. I will use this moment. With a firm step, Sio's foot slammed into the ground, cracks splintering outward as dust and debris swirled around him. His resolve burned unwaveringly in his heart. To ensure that his master would no longer be defiled, he vowed, each movement fueled by unyielding determination. With a fierce battle cry, Sio hurled himself downward like a spear, spiraling through the air with unstoppable momentum. The wind howled around him, the sheer force of his descent tearing through the sky. "Burn it all!" he roared in his heart and aloud, channeling every ounce of his remaining strength into the final, all-consuming strike. The monstrous figure threw back its head and let out a thunderous roar, veins bulging as raw power surged through its massive frame. Muscles tightened like steel cables, and with a savage lunge, it thrust its arm upward toward the descending Sio. Seo's thoughts raced as he plunged toward his target. "I will die," he acknowledged grimly, the truth pressing heavily against his mind. But almost instantly, defiance flared in his eyes. "No, I can't die yet." His jaw clenched, teeth grinding as he forced his body to endure. "Just a little more," he urged himself, every muscle straining to push beyond its limits. He gritted his teeth, the metallic tang of blood seeping into his mouth as his senses sharpened to a razor's edge. He could feel everything, the area around him, the noises echoing in the air, the faint scents carried by the wind. He noted the subtle shifts in humidity and temperature, every detail registering in his mind. Even the warm blood wrapping around the tip of his tongue was unmistakable, grounding him in the brutal reality of the moment. His head throbbed violently, every heartbeat sending a pulse of agony through his skull. "My brain feels like it'll explode." The pressure mounted to an unbearable peak, but instead of resisting, his eyes burned with feral resolve. "Then I'll let it explode," he vowed, ready to sacrifice everything for this final moment. Sio's eyes blazed with a wild, unrelenting fire as he pushed his body beyond its limits. More, he demanded of himself, the raw energy surging through him, threatening to consume his very mind. With a primal roar, he swung his blade downward, his voice echoing like thunder. "Until my brain burns to a crisp." He unleashed every last shred of strength in a single devastating strike. A deafening crack split the air as a surge of crimson energy erupted outward, fracturing the space around it like shattered glass. The red light pulsed violently, radiating raw, destructive power that tore through everything in its path. Sio's eyes widened, his pupils constricting as shock and realization struck him all at once. His breath caught in his throat, and the tension in his face froze into an expression of raw disbelief, as if he had just witnessed the impossible unfold before him. It felt as though his skull might burst from the unbearable pressure, his mind teetering on the edge of collapse. Yet, instead of yielding to the crushing strain of staking his life on the line, something within him broke past that limit, surpassing an unseen threshold he hadn't even known existed. His body felt strangely light as he drifted forward, sword in hand, through an unfamiliar void. Confusion gripped his thoughts. What's going on? Have I become delusional? He wondered, unsure if what he was experiencing was reality, or something beyond it. Sio's eyes flew wide open, his pupils trembling as a jolt of realization surged through him. "This is," he thought, the words caught between awe and disbelief, as if he had just stepped into a truth far beyond his understanding. Co charged forward, his expression fierce and unyielding, sword poised to strike. He could finally see the moment of his enemy's attack. He could feel it. With a thunderous impact, Co's strike met the towering Director Kim head-on. The creature's massive clawed foot slammed into the ground, cracking the earth beneath it, while its grotesque, sinewed form twisted in an effort to overpower him. Co drove forward with all his might, the clash shaking the battlefield as their combined force tore through the air. He stood firm beneath the dark, swirling sky, his tattered robes fluttering in the wind. Gripping his sword with unwavering resolve, he let the blade gleam with a brilliant arc of blue light that cut through the gloom. His weathered gaze was steady, carrying both the weight of countless battles and the unyielding will to see this one through to the end. Seo's blade pierced the dark clouds above, its edge trailing a sharp arc of blue light that split the sky. With a single, decisive slash, his blade tore through the monstrous foe's massive frame. Blood erupted in a violent spray as the creature's agonized roar echoed through the air, its body convulsing from the devastating blow. Co's strike carried both precision and overwhelming force, leaving the beast staggered and reeling. His eyes widened, a sharp glint of realization flashing within them. Could this be? He wondered, his gaze unwavering. The thought struck him like a thunderclap. Blood still gushed from the deep wound carved across Director Kim's chest, yet Kim's lips curved upward in a faint, almost serene smile. Co's eyes widened in disbelief. Kim Young-hoon is smiling, a talent blessed by the heavens and a talent forsaken by the heavens, two extremes standing on opposite ends. Though they were polar opposites, there was a single thread that made them alike, a reason why their paths felt strangely parallel despite the vast gulf between them. It was because, despite their differences, they were both ultimately struggling to break free from the fate the heavens had bestowed upon them. Each, in their own way, was defying the path written for them, refusing to surrender to destiny's grip. Co gripped his sword tightly, and a blinding red light swallowed the battlefield, casting everything into stark silhouettes. In that instant, the sound of flesh being torn apart rang out sharply, each strike punctuated by the spray of blood bursting through the crimson haze. The figures clashed in a violent crescendo, their forms locked in a deadly dance against the backdrop of searing scarlet. Co realized there was no such thing as a genius or a dunce. There were only two men who had spent their entire lives struggling against the fates imposed upon them, one now lying dead and the other standing on the brink of death. With a defiant grin, Director Kim's eyes gleamed with challenge as he asked Co if he was going to stop there. But Co knew this was not the end. He was not going to stop. He leapt high into the air, his cloak billowing as the tip of his sword gleamed under the moonlit sky. Channeling all his strength, he unleashed the 15th form, Layered Mountain, an overwhelming slash that descended like a tempest. The ground below erupted violently upon impact, shockwaves tearing through the earth as dust and debris exploded outward in a roaring cascade. Dust swirled in the aftermath, the fractured ground groaning beneath the strike's force. Amid the chaos, a voice echoed with cold finality. "Yeah, this is the end." Seeing this, the cultivator's face contorted with rage, veins bulging across his temple as he threw his head back and roared. The cry tore from his throat with raw fury, his wide eyes blazing and his teeth bared in unrestrained defiance. Seo's voice was cold and certain as he hurled his foe through the air. "Now," he said, "even a cultivator won't be able to identify Director Kim's corpse any longer." The body tumbled weightlessly, fragments of stone falling alongside it into the dark abyss below. With his eyes gently closed and a faint, serene smile on his face, Co spoke softly, his voice carrying both reverence and sorrow. In his final moment, he prayed that his martial arts master could rest in peace. The words lingered in the air like a final blessing, as if he were sending off an old friend on their last journey. And so, he had finally reached the level of martial arts he had long yearned for, a peak he had chased through years of relentless effort. With that, he brought an end to a life defined by unending struggles and ceaseless battles. This marked the end of his fourth regression, a chapter closed in the long cycle of lives he had endured. Co lay on the grass, staring at his hand in disbelief. He realized that he had regressed once more. Memories of his past life began to surface. He remembered how, in that life, he had fought relentlessly until the very end. Clenching his fist tightly, he recalled the moment with pride. He had finally achieved what he had been striving for. With overwhelming emotion, he clenched his fist and shouted to the sky. After countless struggles, he had finally done it. He had reached the peak of martial arts. At last, He had attained the strength and mastery he had longed for his entire life. Just as he was recalling the moment, John came running angrily, shouting at Seo. "What the hell are you talking about?" His face twisted with rage as he accused, "It's your fault, you crazy bastard." Meanwhile, Seo remained calm, barely reacting to the outburst. A sharp glint flashed in his eyes as a confident smile formed on his face. With certainty, he murmured to himself, "I see it." The furious John swung his hand down in an attempt to strike, but Seo calmly tilted his body and dodged with ease. Shocked and angry, the man shouted, "You're dodging!" With his eyes closed and a calm expression, Seo thought to himself that he could still clearly sense everything. He knew exactly where John Myung-hoon's next strike would land. Seo moved smoothly, avoiding each attack with ease. He reflected that before, he could dodge strikes even with his eyes closed, but that was only because he predicted the trajectory of his opponent's moves. That ability came from decades of martial arts experience. Seo realized that this time was different. It wasn't just prediction based on experience. It felt more like true foresight, as if he could clearly see his opponent's next move before it even happened. He realized the truth. No matter how many first-rate martial artists there were, none could ever defeat someone who had reached the peak level. Such masters could clearly see the trajectory and direction of attacks from those weaker than them. Against that kind of power, how could an ordinary martial artist ever hope to stand a chance? His eyes glowed with a sharp blue light as he focused intensely. With determination burning inside him, he thought to himself, "This time, I realize something new. I can instinctively sense it." The glowing blue lines revealed his opponent's openings and showed him the best possible trajectories to strike with. He noticed the difference in his vision. Red lines revealed the paths of his opponent's attacks, while blue lines guided him toward the most optimal counterattacks. He thought to himself that the gap between John Myung-hoon and him was simply too vast. That overwhelming difference was the reason he could see so many openings in his opponent's moves. Seo's eyes widened in surprise as blood trickled from his nose. Shocked, he couldn't understand what had just happened. Clutching his head in pain, Seo gritted his teeth as blood ran down his face. "Damn, it hurts. It feels like my brain is on fire." The realization struck him. Could this vision be overloading his brain? Breathing heavily with rage, John Myung-hoon swung his fist at Seo while shouting, "You bastard! You nearly got us all killed, and now you dare to dodge my attacks." In an instant, Seo struck back with precision. John's eyes rolled back as his head snapped to the side, sweat flying off his face from the sharp impact. He collapsed to the ground, knocked out cold. Seo stood over him calmly, while a group of colleagues rushed over in shock, shouting, "Section Chief John!" Seo clutched his head, still feeling the strain from the overwhelming vision. One of his colleagues approached with concern and asked, "Deputy Manager Seo, is he all right?" Seo wiped the blood from his nose and let out a deep breath. To think it had hurt this much after using it for such a short time, he thought, frowning. What could be the problem? After the fight, Seo took a moment to steady himself and then reassured his co-workers. Once he had calmed them down, the tense atmosphere began to ease. He led them to a cave and started a fire to keep them safe. After cooking some fruits for them to eat, he watched as they slowly drifted off to sleep, finally able to rest. Inside the cave, his co-workers lay scattered around the warm fire, fast asleep. The crackling flames filled the silence as they found a moment of peace after the chaos. While they slept, Seo stood outside under the night sky, practicing with a wooden stick. His movements were sharp and precise, slicing through the air as leaves fluttered around him. With a swift strike of his stick, Seo cleanly split a falling leaf in two, showcasing the sharp precision of his movements. He looked at the branch in his hand with a faint smile. "Without using a single bit of chi, I managed to slice a leaf clean in half. With just this dull branch," he thought, realizing the precision of his control. Seo reflected on his ability. The vision of martial peak seemed to predict his opponent's moves, and his brain interpreted them, displaying red and blue lines before his eyes. Seo analyzed calmly. If he used this vision, he could read all of his opponent's movements and strike at their weaknesses with the most optimal counter. At last, Seo understood. So this is why Director Kim called it the memory of all five senses. It's actually a replication of a peak martial artist's vision. His eyes glowed with sharp blue light as he realized the truth. Director Kim had been forcing him to enhance all five senses and manually calculate his opponent's trajectories. As Seo held the branch, countless blue lines spread out before his eyes, mapping every possible path. The vision of martial peak is truly incredible, he thought in awe. Seo stood firm in the forest clearing, leaves swirling wildly around him. With the branch in his hand and a calm yet sharp gaze, he radiated quiet confidence, fully immersed in the power of his newly realized vision. Slowly, he closed his eyes, shutting out the world around him. In the darkness behind his eyelids, memories of battles and warriors resurfaced vividly, as if guiding him toward deeper understanding. In his mind's eye, Seo saw countless warriors in green robes charging forward with swords, axes, and spears, each strike fierce and deadly. Their movements overlapped like echoes of battle, as though he were reliving the experiences of countless martial artists at once. Seo moved with fluid precision, weaving through the storm of phantom warriors. Each swing of his branch struck perfectly, guided by visions of countless martial techniques, as if he were fighting alongside generations of masters within a single moment. In his vision, the warriors shouted fiercely, their blades flashing as they attacked from every direction. The scene was chaotic and relentless, a storm of martial fury pressing down on him all at once. As dawn broke, the forest bathed in the warm glow of sunrise. Amid the quiet rustle of leaves, Seo exhaled heavily, his breath ragged from the intense training and visions he had endured throughout the night. Drenched in sweat, he let out a relieved smile. "Now," he muttered, exhaustion mixing with determination after a night of relentless training. Standing tall with the branch still in hand, Seo looked out at the morning light with unwavering confidence. "I've finally reached the proper martial peak," he declared to himself, his heart pounding with triumph. Suddenly, Seo clutched his head in agony, gritting his teeth. His brain felt like it was about to fry to a crisp, the strain of his newfound power overwhelming him. But after he found 8 yellow bamboo roots nearby and performed the dragon vein chi method, he managed to stabilize himself. Now, he could maintain the vision for 3 whole hours. Seo looked down at the bamboo roots and thought to himself, "Now that I've reached this level of prowess, I no longer need to sell these yellow bamboo roots. I can resolve financial issues with my own abilities." As for the leftovers, carrying the remaining roots back to the cave, he glanced at Director Kim, who was snoring loudly in his orange jacket. Seo set the roots beside him. Director Kim slept soundly, unaware of the intense training Seo had just undergone outside. Seo sat quietly in the cave, deep in thought. In my memory are 6 volumes of Director Kim's research, as well as his final teachings before he died, he reflected, feeling the weight of the knowledge entrusted to him. Looking at the man sleeping peacefully, Seo thought, if I pass this knowledge to him, this life's Director Kim will surely surpass the previous one. Now that I've reached the martial peak, the teachings I can receive from him will far exceed what I gained in my past life. Leaving the leftover roots beside Director Kim, Seo stepped out of the cave once more. He still had no clue how to reach the next stage, but unlike his co-workers, he knew there was only one option for an idiot like him: train endlessly. To continuously maintain a peak master's vision and allow his brain to adapt to it, that was his path. Seo's eyes narrowed with determination. My first goal in this life is to resolve the burning pain I suffer when using this vision. And then, Seo envisioned his ultimate goal, to finally attain the level of the 3 flowers gathering at the summit. Glowing blue lotuses shimmered in his mind's eye, symbolizing the pinnacle of mastery he longed to reach. Seo walked out of the cave with firm steps, his fists clenched in resolve. I will reach what is known as the pinnacle of Martial Peak, the 3 flowers gathering at the summit. Morning arrived, sunlight spilling over the mountains and forest, marking the beginning of a new day filled with determination and resolve. The enormous fox, known as the Master of the Forest, appeared once more in this life. As Seo knelt and stretched out his arm toward the beast, curiosity filled his heart. His sharp blue eyes gleamed with anticipation as he wondered, will I see red lines with this fox as well? However, to his surprise, the fox's body glowed with a fierce red aura as waves of pressure rippled through the air. There was no blue. Seo's eyes widened in shock as his vision was overwhelmed. It's red everywhere. The fox's bloody jaws snapped open, its fangs dripping with menace. Seo froze in terror, his thoughts trembling. He realized he couldn't win. Staggering back, blood splattering around him, he clenched his teeth in confusion. Just what is this? He thought desperately. How could the entire area in my vision be filled with red? A few days later, under the night sky, cultivators descended from the heavens. When they arrived, Seo was once again left in shock. The cultivators floated high above, their overwhelming presence distorting everything around them. Seo's vision flared, his heart racing in disbelief. Again, it was all red. Sweat dripped down his face as he stared in horror. He realized the difference between a martial artist and a cultivator. There was no opening, no chance of victory. Even a martial peak master would struggle against the weakest of cultivators, those only at the first star of the chi refining stage. The day after the cultivators took his co-workers, Seo turned to Seo Huel, the Sea Dragon King, and asked a question. With a respectful gesture, Seo bowed slightly and said, "A humble mortal asks the great Sea Dragon King a question." The Sea Dragon King tilted his head with a faint smile and replied, "What is it?" Seo explained everything he had witnessed and then asked about the mysterious red sphere the cultivators carried. The Sea Dragon King chuckled softly. "Cultivators possess a special kind of consciousness," he said. "It is sometimes called divine consciousness. While a mortal's consciousness does not extend past the brain, a cultivator's consciousness spreads outward, engulfing the surrounding area. I too, as a spiritual creature, possess this ability." After explaining, the Sea Dragon King turned to leave. Seo bowed respectfully and thanked him. Meanwhile, Director Kim watched in confusion. Since the conversation was spoken in the language of Yangguo, Director Kim couldn't understand a single word. Shortly after Seo Hueol departed, the hunchbacked old man appeared once more, controlling a puppet at his side. This time, he came to take Manager Kim away. Without warning, the old man hurled Seo and Director Kim into a swirling spatial rift, dragging them into the unknown. The two were suddenly plunged into deep waters, their bodies sinking helplessly after being cast through the rift. Seo struggled underwater, bubbles escaping his mouth as his eyes widened in shock. "What the?" Panic surged through him. He pulled himself toward the surface, his hand gripping wet sand as he dragged himself ashore, frustration clear in his voice. "It was on top of the trees last time, now it's in water." Seo stood on the shore, wringing the water from his clothes, while Director Kim lay exhausted on the sand. Gasping for breath, Director Kim finally woke, panic in his eyes, and asked Seo where they were. Seo, still calm despite the situation, answered firmly, "Somewhere completely different." He buttoned up his damp shirt while scanning the surroundings. Judging by the landscape, this is the Chickenhead Lake of Yangguo. Changho City should be nearby, he thought. Director Kim let out a frustrated sigh and asked, "Seo, what should we do now?" Seo glanced around the empty shore and replied, "If there were people nearby, we could ask for directions." He pointed across the shimmering water. There appear to be some buildings across the lake. Director Kim squinted, then nodded quickly. Seo dove into the lake without hesitation, telling him, "I know how to swim. I'll go there and get us some clothes and food." Kim Young-hoon panicked, calling out, "Seo, be careful." As Seo swam across the lake, he muttered in frustration, "For fuck's sake, what did we squeeze the water out of our clothes for then?" Still, his thoughts sharpened. If my memories serve me correctly, that building is a bandit's den. I wiped them out in my previous life. He recalled his past encounter. Their leader had been in the late stages of first rate, the vice leader in the middle stage of first rate, and the rest were just second and third rate small fry. Of course, they had numbers, so he had used poison on his blade to take them out. Suddenly, one of the bandits turned his head, narrowing his eyes. A moment later, his expression shifted to shock as he noticed someone approaching. Seo emerged from the water, droplets streaming down his clothes as he walked toward the shore. The bandits burst into laughter. "Who's this fool? Doesn't even know where he just swam to?" One sneered. "Get lost if you don't want to die," another spat. Seo ignored their jeers, fists clenched tightly, his steps steady and determined. One of the bandits charged, raising his club with a furious roar. "Didn't you hear me? Get lost." But Seo stood firm, unfazed. In a flash, he struck with overwhelming force, sending the bandit crashing to the ground with a thunderous impact. The man's weapon flew from his hands as he was slammed down, defeated in an instant. The other bandits froze in shock, their eyes wide. He took him down with one hit. Seo casually picked up the fallen bandit's weapon, giving it a quick test in his grip. With a faint smirk, he muttered, "Not bad." As Seo walked calmly onto the shore with the fallen bandit at his back, he asked the bandits, "How many people have they killed?" The muscular bandit raised his massive spiked mace, veins bulging with rage, ready to attack Seo. He told him that he's killed 50, and that he will be happy to send him to them. But before the bandit could even finish his retort, Seo's strike ripped through him in a blur. Blood sprayed into the air as the giant stumbled, his mace slipping from his grip. Seo stood calm and unshaken. The surrounding bandits gasped in horror, fear flickering across their faces. Seo's cold voice cut through the silence. From here on out, anyone who's killed before can come at me. From the tall wooden building overlooking the camp, watchful eyes peered down. The leaders had heard the commotion. Inside, they lounged around drinking and laughing, women pouring wine as they reveled without care. One of them roared in amusement, while another yanked harshly at a bound woman. "Come here, bitch!" he barked cruelly, making her cry out in fear. Just then, a bandit holding a cup of wine paused mid-pour, eyes narrowing toward the noise outside. "Who the hell is that?" he muttered. The doors burst open, flooding the room with blinding light. Seo stood at the entrance, his silhouette dark and menacing. In one hand, he gripped a bloodied club. In the other, he held the severed head of a bandit, letting it dangle for all to see. The room fell silent. Terror crept into every corner. Seated on a grand chair draped in tiger skin, the bandit leader glared with a cold sneer, his hand resting on the head of a growling tiger at his side. "You son of a bitch," he muttered darkly. Then, raising his voice, he roared, "Kill that rat!" Chaos erupted. Armed men drew their swords surrounding Seo. The women were shoved aside, cowering in fear, while the leader sat back on his throne, confident. Seo tightened his grip on the club, his eyes burning with cold resolve. "No need to ask. You're all going to die." The aftermath was painted in blood. Bodies of bandits lay scattered across the ground, lifeless and broken. The once noisy stronghold stood silent, looming wooden buildings now drenched in crimson. The bandit leader, who had once sat proudly on his throne, now trembled on the floor, his face pale with terror. You're a peak master," he stammered, pleading desperately. "Please, spare me." Seo stepped forward, his shoe pressing into a pool of blood. He asked coldly, "How long did this take?" The terrified leader, surrounded by corpses, stammered, About 15 minutes." Blood streaked across Seo's face as he compared the moment to his past. "Last time it took me a whole day to wipe them out. I had to set this place on fire, retreat, and take them one by one with poison. But this time, in just 15 minutes, I killed them all with a stick." The weight of his growth compared to his past life was undeniable. Seo loomed over the trembling bandit leader, his club dripping blood. "All right, now die. Wait, I'll tell you where I hid the money. Just spare me." Seo didn't care. With a brutal swing, his club silenced the plea. Blood splattered across the floor. "As for the money, I already know where it is, from the last time I was here." After wiping out the bandits, Seo calmly unlocked the heavy brass padlock, freeing dozens of captives. As he stepped outside, the freed people dropped to their knees, voices trembling with gratitude. "Thank you, brave one. You've taken revenge on these damned bandits." Seo's expression remained calm and unreadable. He only let out a quiet pause, their gratitude weighing little compared to his own thoughts. One of the captives looked up, his voice shaking. "Please, at least tell us your title, so we can repay our debt." Seo scratched the back of his head, glancing at the kneeling crowd. "A title," he muttered. The crowd bowed even lower, voices rising with respect. "Do inform us." A confident smile curved Seo's lips as sunlight glinted across his face. "My title is Infinite Fighting Spirit." He went with Director Kim to Changho City. There they used the bandits' money to buy identification plaques and a manor for themselves. After that, he was taught both martial arts and writing by Director Kim. Just like that, 2 months passed, and Director Kim sat in deep meditation, surrounded by glowing blue lotus lights, with rare herbs placed in front of him. Seo looked at Director Kim and realized that he was growing faster than before. Watching this progress made Seo feel almost discouraged. Seo thought to himself that it had always been this way. For some, reaching the peak of martial arts could take a lifetime, while others could skip past the early stages altogether. With the guidance of a great master and powerful martial arts, they could even reach the realm of the 3 flowers gather at the summit. Seo walked toward Director Kim and offered his congratulations. He found it unbelievable that Director Kim had reached the realm of 3 flowers gather at the summit before even fully learning how to read. Director Kim admitted that he was quite surprised himself. He never expected that he would possess such great martial talent. Seo thought back and realized he had never truly had an evenly matched duel with Director Kim after Kim reached the realm of the 3 flowers. Instead, Director Kim had only been offering him guidance through sparring. Seo wondered how things would be now. He had already reached the martial peak, while Kim Young-hoon had just stepped into the realm of the 3 flowers. Seo asked Director Kim if he would be interested in a duel. Director Kim laughed and agreed, saying he might finally have a chance at winning this time. After agreeing, both of them headed toward the mountains. There, Seo and Director Kim clashed fiercely. Seo unleashed the Severing Mountain Sword, while Director Kim countered with Entering Mountain. The force of their blows shook the ground as the two exchanged powerful strikes. Director Kim swung his sword with fierce strength, unleashing the technique Severing Leyline Blade, Dragon Hill. Energy surged around him as the strike cut through the air with overwhelming power. Seeing this, Seo realized in shock that his blue energy lines were being pushed back. Feeling the pressure of Director Kim's attack, he quickly decided that he needed to dodge. However, Seo stopped and thought for a moment. He realized that if he dodged, he would just keep getting pushed back. Seo felt an intense urge to win rising inside his heart. He couldn't understand why the desire to triumph was burning so fiercely within him. He realized that this duel might be his very last chance, the only opportunity he would ever have to defeat Director Kim in this lifetime. Seo knew that Kim Young-hoon would continue to grow at an incredible pace. The next time they fought, Young-hoon's strength would reach a level that Seo could never hope to match. Seo and Director Kim clashed fiercely, their swords colliding in midair. The impact sent shockwaves rippling through the forest, shaking the ground and trees around them. Seo gritted his teeth, realizing the weight of the duel. This moment, while Director Kim had just attained the realm of 3 flowers, this was his final chance to defeat him in this lifetime. Seo tightened his grip on his hidden weapons and steeled his resolve. Yeah, let's win. He charged forward with full determination, hurling his hidden blades as he shouted in his heart, using everything he had. Director Kim's eyes widened in surprise as Seo's hidden blades shot toward him. He quickly raised his sword, deflecting the incoming strikes with a sharp clang of steel. Seo steadied himself with his sword, a sharp look in his eyes. He had disrupted the flow of Kim's moves, feeling a brief opening in the clash. He pressed forward with determination, thinking to himself that he was ahead of him in terms of real combat experience. So he could win. Seo unleashed a powerful strike, shouting, "Severing Mountain Sword, Flowing Ridge." The ground split apart violently, sending rocks and shockwaves surging toward Director Kim. Director Kim's eyes gleamed with confidence as he charged forward through the debris. With a fierce smile, it was clear he would show Seo the stage that was the 3 flowers. Suddenly, Seo's eyes widened as his instincts screamed in alarm. Every sense in his body was sending him danger signals. Something big was coming, and he was right. Director Kim raised his sword high as blue energy swirled violently around him. He unleashed his strength, channeling enhanced blade ki into the strike. A devastating wave of blade chi tore through the ground as Director Kim unleashed his attack, splitting the earth apart and surging straight toward Seo with unstoppable force. Seo's gaze sharpened, sweat rolling down his face. He knew that if he tried to clash head-on with that attack, he would be completely severed. However, he refused to back down. He tightened his grip on his sword, energy swirling violently around him. The Severing Mountain Sword he had trained so hard to master was now his only answer. The Severing Mountain Sword was no ordinary technique. It was a martial art created by the genius Kim Young-hoon, who had mastered the 5 energies converging into the origin. Drawing upon that power, Seo unleashed his might. Severing Mountain Sword, Echoing Valley. A blinding surge of sword energy split the skies, tearing through the forest below. The ground quaked, trees swayed violently, and birds scattered into the air as the devastating strike crashed down with unstoppable force. Dust and debris exploded into the air, filling the battlefield with a thick haze. Through the thick dust and swirling debris, a shadowy figure emerged with his sword still in hand. Director Kim's voice carried through the haze, filled with a mix of respect and thrill. He found it incredible. Seo panted heavily, his eyes wide with disbelief. Director Kim had withstood his counterattack. That strike was supposed to shatter the old man's blade and send him flying back, yet he still stood firm. However, Director Kim lowered his blade. His voice was calm yet heavy with finality as he admitted the truth. This battle was his defeat. Director Kim looked down at his broken weapon, a faint smile crossing his face. To him, having his blade shatter was a disgrace as a martial artist. Still, he acknowledged Seo with sincerity, admitting that he was truly experienced. Seo calmly sheathed his sword, his voice steady. There was no need for Director Kim to worry, because from this moment on, he knew that he would never again be able to defeat him. With the conclusion of today's battle, Seo accepted the truth. He would never again be able to defeat Kim Young-hoon. Not in this lifetime, only perhaps in the next. Sometime later, both of them went back to the grand chamber. Seo told Director Kim that for reaching the stage where the three flowers gathered at the summit realm, a special reward had been prepared as a gift for him. Inside the quiet chamber, Director Kim let out a small laugh, asking if the fierce duel they just had wasn't already his gift. Curious, he wondered if something more had been prepared. Seo stepped forward, holding out a box with both hands, and replied calmly that indeed, here was the true present. Seo revealed the gift, a stack of ancient blue-bound scriptures. They were known as the scriptures of gazing cultivation and exceeding martial arts. He explained that he had acquired them from an old man who claimed that only those who had reached the realm of the three flowers could truly comprehend and master their contents. Seo admitted that he had tried reading the scriptures himself, but couldn't make sense of them, so he decided to entrust them to Director Kim. With a pleased smile, Director Kim considered it a stroke of luck and accepted the gift gratefully. After Seo had taught him how to read, Kim Young-hoon immersed himself fully in the 6 volumes. He became deeply entranced by the scriptures of gazing cultivation and exceeding martial arts, losing himself in their profound teachings. 4 months passed, and the grand halls of the palace stood beneath the clear sky, marking the passage of time since Kim Young-hoon had begun his deep study of the scriptures. Seo returned with a bright smile, holding a heavy pouch in his hand. He called out to Young-hoon, telling him he had brought back money. With excitement, he explained that he had caught a big one this time, earning quite the bounty. But when he stepped into the room with the pouch of bounty in his hand, he noticed it was empty. Only the scriptures lay open on the floor. Looking around in confusion, he wondered aloud if Young-hoon had left. Seo's eyes swept across the empty room, settling on the scriptures left behind. A deep unease filled him as he realized he couldn't sense Young-hoon's presence at all. It was as if the man had completely vanished. Suddenly, a chilling pressure filled the room. From within the lingering aura, Kim Young-hoon emerged, wreathed in a dark, ominous energy. His eyes gleamed with newfound power, and a sinister smile spread across his face. Seo froze in shock, gasping as fear coursed through him. Kim Young-hoon laughed triumphantly, holding one of the scriptures in his hand. He explained that he had used a technique from the scriptures of gazing cultivation and exceeding martial arts, one that concealed his presence so completely that Seo couldn't detect him at all. His eyes gleamed with excitement as he declared that these books truly contained astonishing martial arts. Seo's voice trembled as he called out to him, realizing the gravity of what he had just witnessed. In his mind, he thought to himself, this strange technique was something Kim Young-hoon was only supposed to use after reaching the realm of the 5 energies gathering at the origin. Yet now, he was using it already, long before even a full year had passed since Seo's regression. Kim Young-hoon laughed as he held the scripture in his hands, explaining that this was just one of the many techniques recorded within it. He pointed out that if even a martial artist like Seo, who had already reached martial peak, couldn't sense his presence, then he could easily assassinate anyone he wished without being detected. Seo looked at Young-hoon with a faint smile, his eyes reflecting both admiration and a hint of unease. In his mind, he acknowledged the undeniable truth. Indeed, what stood before him was pure talent. Kim Young-hoon mentioned that he was preparing to travel across the lands to gain real combat experience and asked Seo if he wanted to join him. Seo, however, politely declined, saying he was fine without going. Young-hoon looked at him curiously, puzzled by his response, and asked what he meant. Seo explained that he wanted to focus on stabilizing his comprehension of martial peak rather than traveling. Hearing this, Kim Young-hoon nodded in understanding, noting that Seo was still at the beginning stage of martial peak and had yet to master the use of sword silk. Seo admitted that while stabilizing his martial peak was important, something else had caught his attention. He had begun to develop an interest in the imperial regime. Hearing this, Kim Young-hoon tilted his head slightly, surprised, and repeated the words with curiosity. Imperial regime? Seo explained that if he managed to secure a position within the government, there might come a day when he could lend support to Young-hoon, who would likely be active within the Murim world by then. Hearing this, Director Kim gave a warm smile and thanked Seo with gratitude. After that, Seo and Director Kim chose to part ways for the time being, each setting out on their own path. Yet deep down, Seo admitted to himself that his desire to join the imperial regime wasn't solely out of interest. It was driven by other, more personal reasons he had yet to reveal. From the knowledge Seo had accumulated during his time as the strategist of the Martial Arts Alliance, he knew one crucial truth. The imperial family of Yangguo had deeper ties with cultivators than any other mortal organization. This connection made them uniquely influential, and it was one of the main reasons he set his sights on the imperial regime. According to rumors, it was said that the imperial family of Yangguo was not purely mortal, but in fact a collateral branch tied to a powerful clan of cultivators. With this knowledge in mind, Xiao made his choice. He submitted his application to the Yangguo military, setting his plan into motion. Xiao's reputation as a renowned bounty hunter earned him swift acceptance into the Yangguo military. Once inside, his unmatched skills and combat prowess allowed him to climb the ranks at a remarkable pace, until he eventually secured the position of general. Xiao then set his sights higher, applying for the elite position of Imperial Guard. With his abilities, he passed the selection with ease. Achieving such a prestigious role within just 5 years of his regression was a clear testament to how far he had come. An elder official reminded Xiao of the weight of his new role. His duty as an Imperial Guard was to put his very life on the line to protect His Majesty. With a sharp look, the man added that a martial artist who had reached the peak realm should certainly be capable of fulfilling such a responsibility. Xiao nodded firmly, gripping his weapon with resolve. With steady eyes, he assured the elder official that he would be sure to do so. Xiao entered the imperial family's shadow guards and, after undergoing rigorous training in stealth and hidden breathing techniques, he was soon assigned to duty. After that, the day came when Xiao was finally granted the honor of meeting the emperor. In that moment, Xiao made a startling realization. He had discovered something truly surprising. To his astonishment, he realized the truth. The emperor himself was a cultivator. Xiao could sense it clearly, the consciousness of a cultivator. The emperor was not an ordinary ruler, but a cultivator who had been born with a spiritual root. Although he still could not believe his eyes, his lingering doubts were erased after he encountered several of the emperor's kin. It became clear that the majority of the imperial family were cultivators as well, each possessing the consciousness to match. However, he noticed that the imperial family members did not appear to be higher-ranked cultivators. None of them came anywhere close to the level of that fox he encountered when he came into this world. Even so, Xiao realized that they were cultivators of the qi refining realm. Still, he could not understand why a martial artist who had only just reached martial peak was required to guard them. Although he could sense that the emperor's consciousness was far greater than that of someone at the qi refining stage, first star. With such overwhelming power, the emperor alone was stronger than all of the shadow guards combined. Xiao realized that the shadow guard existed merely as a convenience for the emperor, something he relied on because he was too lazy to personally deal with assassins. The emperor was known as the man who faced the greatest number of assassination attempts in the entire empire. Assassins came after the emperor almost every single night, and whenever they did, Xiao was the one who took care of them. Although it was tough every day, at the very least, facing these assassins gave him the chance to gain more experience. And just like that, 5 years went by as Xiao faithfully served the empire as a member of the Shadow Guard. During that time, Director Kim rose to the position of alliance leader. However, since Xiao was serving as a member of the Shadow Guard, he was unable to officially meet with the alliance leader. So Xiao arranged to meet Director Kim in secret. The two shared drinks together, catching up on each other's lives. And then, not long after, events took a sudden turn. That night, within the lantern-lit building, Director Kim tightly gripped his sword. Dark red energy swirled around the blade, hinting that he was about to break through to another realm. Xiao's sharp eyes caught sight of the red lines. He realized they represented the most optimal trajectories his opponent could use to strike at him. Seeing Director Kim, he could feel the danger radiating from the red lines. If he stepped into that area, Director Kim's attacks would slice through him instantly. Xiao paused as a familiar sensation washed over him. This feeling was unmistakable. It was the consciousness of a cultivator. Xiao thought to himself how unfortunate it was. If he had already reached the stage of 3 flowers, he would have been able to see far more. For now, he decided to carefully examine Director Kim's current condition. Although it was difficult to fully grasp what he was seeing, he believed this sight would serve as an important clue for comprehending Sword Silk. Meanwhile, Director Kim slowly exhaled, releasing a faint blue mist from his mouth, a clear sign of the powerful energy flowing within him. His body erupted with blazing energy as golden flames burst forth, his aura surging wildly while his robes tore apart under the overwhelming power. In the next moment, his physique transformed, brimming with power. A confident smile spread across his face as he declared that his body had changed. Seo, watching this, remarked with a faint smile that Director Kim had grown younger. In response, Director Kim confirmed proudly that he had successfully reached the state of 5 energies converging to the origin. Director Kim noted that it was unfortunate for Seo. Had Seo attained the stage of 3 flowers, he would have gained far more from this experience. Seo agreed with the thought, but humbly admitted that it was his own fault. His skills were still too lacking. But Director Kim told Seo that it should still be of some help, advising him to ponder over it more carefully once he returned. As they walked under the night sky, Seo asked Director Kim if he had met a few cultivators by now. Director Kim replied with a simple nod, confirming that he had. As they continued walking through the quiet forest, Seo remarked that Director Kim's domain felt very similar to the consciousness cultivators possessed. He then asked if Director Kim thought there might be a connection between the two. Director Kim agreed that there might indeed be a connection. Within the region around him, he believed he could face cultivators at the chi refining stage head-on. He added that perhaps those who reached the state of 5 energies converging to the origin could gain a sight similar to what cultivators possessed. Seo quietly acknowledged the insight, realizing that even martial artists could train in a way similar to cultivators once they attained the state of 5 energies converging to the origin. Seo reflected that just as the gap between first rate and martial peak was vast, the difference between martial peak and the state of 5 energies converging to the origin must be even greater. The shift in perception at that level was so immense that it became difficult to even imagine what it could truly be. He thought to himself that the experience he gained today would surely aid him when the time came for him to pursue the state of 5 energies. After receiving guidance from Kim Young-hoon, he made his way back to the palace. A few days later, as he was patrolling, the palace halls suddenly grew quiet under the dim glow of lanterns. From the shadows above, a figure crept along the beams of the grand hall. Seo's sharp eyes caught the movement immediately, and he recognized the threat at once. Another assassin had infiltrated the palace. Seo swiftly drew his blade, his senses sharpening as red energy locked onto him. In that instant, he realized the danger. This assassin was no ordinary foe. They were at the level of martial peak. In a flash, the assassin's blade shot forward, glowing with deadly force as it tore through the air. However, Seo calmly assessed the situation as he deflected the assassin's strike. From the flow of their movements, he could tell that although they had reached martial peak, their control was unrefined. It was clear they had only recently attained that level. The assassin leapt from above with a fierce cry, dagger raised high, aiming to strike Seo down in a single decisive blow. From below, Seo stood firm, his gaze steady as he prepared to counter the attack. Steel clashed against steel as Seo met the assassin's strike head-on. Sparks burst from each impact, the hall echoing with the sharp clangs of their weapons. Both fighters moved with speed and precision, locked in a fierce struggle for dominance. Seo's eyes narrowed as he studied the assassin's movements mid-battle. Something about their technique felt unusual, prompting a sharp thought in his mind. It was peculiar. Seo knew he should be focusing entirely on the battle before him, yet his mind wavered. The vivid image of Kim Young-hoon attaining the state of 5 energies lingered in his thoughts, refusing to fade. As Seo steadied his glowing blade, a thought surfaced in his mind. What exactly was sword energy? He recalled the teachings he had heard. Sword energy was proof that one had become truly united with the sword, a sign of reaching the intermediate stages of first rate. He recalled the principle behind sword energy. Once a martial artist reached martial peak, they could perceive the optimal trajectories of their strikes. As long as the sword followed that perfect pathway, the flow of sword energy would never falter. As Seo clashed blades with the assassin, clarity filled his mind. The lines he saw before him were the most flawless paths his sword arts could ever pursue. Sword energy, he realized, was the essence of becoming one with his sword style, drawing out its full potential to the absolute maximum. Through his training, he came to a realization: sword martial arts and sword energy were, in essence, the same. Yet as the thought settled in his mind, doubt crept in. He paused, questioning himself. Hold on, that couldn't be right. If sword martial arts and sword energy were truly the same, then wouldn't even Jiangshi, mindless corpses controlled by cultivators, be able to wield sword energy as long as they were taught the sword? The idea didn't sit right with him. In the midst of combat, Seo's realization deepened. Sword energy was not merely martial arts. Though born from martial techniques, it was something beyond them, an essence greater than simple swordplay. As the truth dawned on him, clarity flashed in his eyes. Seo came to understand that while sword energy was forged through martial arts, its true source lay deeper. At its core, it was born from the human spirit, the will and intention of the martial artist wielding the blade. Seo's realization deepened as he observed the glowing lines. The red and blue paths before him were not just perfect attack trajectories, they were the manifestation of a martial artist's intent. Each line represented the will behind the sword, the very trajectory of intention itself. The moment he grasped that truth, a strange sensation flowed from the hand gripping his sword. It felt as though living veins had sprouted from the blade itself, weaving into his arm and connecting them as one. Just then, the assassin lunged forward with deadly speed, their blades slicing through the air with precision. Every movement carried lethal intent, the strike aimed straight at Seo without hesitation. However, Seo flipped above his opponent, his sword cutting down in a sweeping arc. The assassin below countered with equal ferocity, their strike rising to meet his. Sparks flew as steel collided, the sound echoing sharply through the grand hall. The assassin's eyes widened in shock as a powerful clash erupted, blasting out a wave of force. The impact sent debris flying, and the masked figure staggered back, struggling to withstand the overwhelming strike. As the force of the clash tore through the hall, the assassin's mask was ripped away, revealing the face of a young woman beneath.